Events begin to unfold in the grand hall of the palace where everything shines with gold and wealth. Ophelia sat proudly on her throne and heard a voice addressing her rather rudely. A young man appeared before her, accompanied by knights who informed her that now everything had changed. He threatened that the time had come to answer for his actions and sins. Ophelia remained quite calm and unemotional, with her whole appearance as if to show that she didn't care. The black-haired youth continued and said that he knew that she was the one who poisoned Sitara and tried to harm Lord Utah. He also added that she wanted to hide the emperor's will. Ophelia Dean Raidani was then informed that she would be severely punished according to the laws of the empire. She was asked if she wished to speak her last words. The girl slyly said that she would destroy this world. Ophelia clarified that she really wanted this world, which was so cruel to her, to disappear. At that moment, there were shouts for her to be shot. After a while, Ophelia noticed that she was lying on the floor, and it turned out that she was alive. She felt quite weak as she still felt the pain from Haven's arrows that had passed through her. Then a maid entered the room bringing tea as Her Highness had a bad cough. But at some point, the tray with the tea flew to the floor. The maid was embarrassed when she saw the princess lying on the floor in such a state. She said she would leave immediately. The young girl cried and screamed that she was back and alive again. She painfully remembered that she had already died 4 times and wondered how many more times she would be reincarnated. Now she was reborn. According to the plot of the fantasy novel, The Return of the Crown Prince, she was now Ophelia. The book was about Ophelia being a thief. She locked Ute up in a tower and killed his mother. At the same time, the main character, Ute, was able to overcome all the difficulties. But this novel ended. According to the plot, he defeated his half-sister Ophelia and became emperor. According to the book, the thief Ophelia was expected to face a terrible punishment. But the girl decided to rewrite the ending of this novel. She had long wanted to change the fate of the bad Ophelia, who she was to become after another reincarnation. In the past, she was a beautiful sister to her half-brother Utu, who was locked in a tower. But soon she even abdicated her throne for the rest of her life. The girl is happily married to Kristen Kalman Erhard. He was the next master of the magic tower and also a handsome man who turned out to be superfluous in this novel of the book. But at the same time, she did not expect at all that the man she considered a weak and unimportant protagonist of the novel would be capable of such a thing. One day, Kristen turned to his wife and said that she was to become empress, and he had already prepared everything. Ophelia was upset by the proposal she heard because she had given up the throne in favor of Utah, and he no longer had anything to do with her. She really didn't understand why this was happening to her because she had lived a decent life. The princess once again remembered that moment and that she, Ophelia, was a sinner. People shouted that her head should be cut off. Then she hoped that now her life would definitely end and there would be no more reincarnation, but something else happened. She replayed all those moments from her previous life and couldn't believe that she was really alive now. She couldn't believe she was dying such a horrible death when her head was cut off. The girl recognized the look she had 10 years ago. Had she been transported back in time again? The princess thought with regret that she had so dreamed of creating a happy ending for the novel. The girl guessed that she simply did not expect that her husband, whom she did not consider to be an influential character in the plot at all, would betray her like that. Behind the door, the maid's worried voice was heard again, asking if Her Highness had a cough. Regardless of the worker, the princess continued to wonder why she had come back to life and whether a terrible death would await her again. The maid once again reminded her that she had brought tea to the young hostess. The princess decided that she must act according to the plot of the novel. Only this could stop all her subsequent transformations. The lady asked in a stern tone whether she really had to drink this and overturn the tea tray. The maid, frightened, announced that she would leave the room. The girl understood that every time she was reborn, she chose a cruel life. So she didn't notice that she became even angrier this time. The young lady regretfully calculated that this was her 5th life after reincarnation, but in essence, nothing had changed. In each new life, Ute continued to control her body in the most brutal way possible so that she would not do anything. The princess decided that if her fate was to be constantly reborn, then this time she wanted to die painlessly. She did not want to have arrows piercing her body again and again. The princess cried again and wished that she, the thief, would have the chance to die peacefully. The maids who were present at her dinner were very upset and frightened by this reaction of their mistress. Finally, the princess decided that she needed to stop rambling because she couldn't deviate from the plot. She conceived that before she met her death again, she would give the throne to Yutu. This is what she thought would give her an easy death. It's all she wanted. On that beautiful sunny morning, the young girl thought to herself that she would die peacefully and without pain, so she had nothing to worry about. She wanted it to be a peaceful death, like in a dream, but she didn't know how. Bad thoughts and memories started swirling in her head again. The voice she heard threatened to do everything in its power to make her die in agony. The entire palace district heard the cry that this would never happen. The girl mentally assumed that she must have been reborn again, but she would like to return to the times when Sitara was alive. Sitara was a servant girl who came from a small village in the north. She was also the mother of Yuta, the man who was elected emperor. Without finishing her meal, the girl continued to remember that she had been reborn at the very time when Ophelia had killed Sitara. She would like to go back in time to prevent this. She also thought with regret that if Sitara were alive, Ute would not hate her so much. The maids who were present during the princess's emotional reflections asked her fearfully if she didn't like the food and asked her not to punish them. The girl wondered why they were so afraid of her when she had only just taken a breath. She was also troubled by the question of whether asking for a peaceful death was too much. She understood that she was now living the life of a thief, but she still had to find a way to die peacefully. That morning, someone asked Her Highness at the castle where she was going. It was Amy's maid stammering, trying to find out from the princess where she was going. The princess in turn asked her how long that child had been sitting there completely covered up. Amy thought for a moment and tried to clarify if this was about His Highness Utah. She replied that today was exactly a year since he had seen the light of day. The princess remembered that she had actually been keeping him there for a whole year. Then a new idea came to her mind on how to proceed. She figured out how to get a peaceful death in this novel. The princess decided that she needed to play the role of a victim in front of Ute, and he would grant her a peaceful death. According to her new plot idea, Ute should not die because he is the main character. She understood that Ute was currently in a terrible prison, but even under such conditions, he had never been sick there. In other words, she meant that suffering is better than inevitable death. The princess seemed to be going crazy, continuing to search for a plan and come up with a plot that would allow her to die peacefully. Her head was filled with thoughts that she should stop thinking about this, and the question of whether she would succeed in this plan. The maids whispered behind her back that the princess was behaving rather strangely and wondered if it would rain blood in the palace. And the princess at that time understood everything and regretted that she now had to live the life of a thief. The young gentleman, Mr. Ute, continued to sit in prison. The prisoner's full name was Uthdyne Rhydanius, and he was the emperor's only son and Ophelia's half-brother. He assured the young worker, Shauna, not to worry because he was just looking out the window. He fantasized that it would be nice if he could finally get out of here and take a walk with her on such a sunny day. Shauna mentally noted that he was a very cute child. She began to beg the young man to always remember who had sent him here and that he could not forget his mother's death. Shauna added that this was all the work of the vile Ophelia. Ute was scared that they might be overheard because they couldn't say such things about the princess. At that moment, Princess Ophelia and her maids were already standing at the door. She assumed that she must have arrived too late. She ordered the workers to stay nearby. They wanted to object to her, but they didn't dare. In the prison, that Mr. Yude should be patient and that the emperor would soon rescue him. The boy asked Shani if he was talking about the old man, but soon something caught their attention. Ophelia entered the room and said that it would be difficult for the emperor to do this because he was already quite old. The young man looked at her in surprise and she greeted him. Shauna covered Yuta with her and began to blame Ophelia for coming here because she promised not to touch him. The princess wondered if she was not afraid of her and wanted her to kill her. Then she giggled and regretted saying that because she was just used to being the thief, Ophelia. Frightened Ute began to beg Shauna to ask the princess for forgiveness. He was very afraid of losing her. Ophelia mentally remembered that her half-brother had also truly loved her in her first life. She remembered how he admired her, but at the same time, memories of how she, a sinner, had her head cut off came to her mind. so she decided that all this love could be fake. The princess said it was all trifles and asked Yuta to forget about it. She asked the guy if he wanted to get out of here. The maids overheard the conversation outside the door and wondered what the princess had said. Ophelia asked if he wanted to get out of here. Oot raised his head in fear and dared to address Her Highness. The boy asked her the purpose of her visit. Did she really want to kill him? Ophelia understood that she had to look quite evil in her role, but with a kind look, she asked him why he thought so. Yud explained that he knew she wouldn't have come here and agreed to let him out if she didn't have plans for him. He added with regret that he thought that even if they let him out of here, she would send him to some terrible place, perhaps more terrible than death. The girl saw how afraid he was of her and mentally noted his true lust for life. Suddenly, Shauna's defense attorney screamed that Mr. Ute was right and they couldn't trust her. Ophelia was pleased with the little captive's reaction. She asked the boy if he was waiting for the emperor to save him. The girl added that they simply did not know the latest news. And the fact is that the emperor has health problems, so she assumed that he was not capable of anything right now. She mockingly said that he was almost dying and would soon be reunited with Sitara, and she was the only one who could free her half-brother. Ute was unpleasantly shocked by what he heard and asked again. One of the maids admitted that she found it rather strange that Princess Ophelia asked Utah about his desire to leave. She didn't understand why she needed to scare Mr. Ute even more and wondered what she was up to. At the same time, Ophelia began to intimidate the young man even more. But in a rather sweet tone, she clarified that he should carefully consider who could save and free him. The guy thought for a moment, and at that moment, Ophelia saw before her the face of Ute on whom she had so counted, full of strength and determination. After all, in past lives, she had already seen her stepbrother's gaze filled with hatred and the desire to kill her. She remembered her past lives and how terribly her first life had been ruined. But the culprit wasn't just her husband, Kirsten, but also how bad she was herself. The princess recalled an episode when a woman sat on her knees in front of her while she towered over the throne. It was Sitara, and Ophelia informed her that the emperor had no feelings for her. Sitara begged the princess to have mercy on her. Her Highness then replied that she would take everything under her control and destroy anyone who stood in her way. The woman begged for mercy and said that she would give up everything and live a quiet life somewhere far away as long as she did not touch little Utah. At that moment, Ophelia did sign it. She told Sitara that she had to answer for her words. A voice informed Her Highness that they had a big problem. The boy Ute was told that Mrs. Sitara had been poisoned. Ophelia reacted with an unwavering look and said that this was quite sad news. It was then that the princess told her half-brother Yuto that they should become friends. This was back in her first life. Now in the prisoner's room, Her Highness reminded the young man of this because then he must have thought she was joking. She said it quite loudly and emotionally, but she couldn't help but hear the whispering of the maids behind the door. Ophelia admitted that she didn't expect Ute to believe her, even though she promised to protect him. She said that in any case, the choice would be his. Either he would believe her and get out of here, or he would continue to be afraid and stay here. After that, she left the room and ordered Amy to follow her. Amy felt sorry for Mrs. Utah. She thought he would be safely hidden away forever. Ophelia at that time was waiting for the right reaction from the guy. Soon as she was leaving, she felt someone holding on to her. It was Ute telling Her Highness that he wanted to get out of there. He stated quite confidently that he didn't really know the princess's wishes, but he didn't want to be a prisoner in the tower anymore. Ophelia decided that this little boy was actually the main character he had overcome all his fears. Shauna shouted at him not to make a mistake because it was dangerous, but Yut replied that his being here was what could be more dangerous. He confidently added that he didn't care that it might be dangerous, he had decided to get out of here. Shauna kept trying to convince him not to go, but they were both crying at that moment. The princess, looking at the young man's reaction, decided that he was actually very smart and prudent. But out loud, she said that Ute looked small and unkempt like that kitten. The young man, who didn't understand anything, clarified what she meant. Ophelia understood that they did not trust each other, but such a relationship completely satisfied her. Shauna watched them go. She heard Her Highness contemptuously order Amy to wash the dirty child. Meanwhile, a respectable gentleman dressed for a business. The butler asked him if he was going to go out. But when he didn't get an answer, he added that he should be careful. The maids were washing Mr. Ute thoroughly in the bathroom. They offered to give him lavender water and water that had been infused with special herbs and lemon. He then received instructions on how to properly use the perfume. There were 42 bottles in total. The maids also showed him clothes for every day, which he was very surprised by. At this time, Shauna entered the room and announced that she had brought him clothes. When she saw his new outfit, she started yelling for them to stop because he was uncomfortable. Shauna tried to approach her husband Utah but was very nervous. After all the procedures, the boy looked flawless. He didn't want his sister to say again that he smelled and was dirty. The maids asked him to follow them. He was delighted with what he saw and could not believe that such beautiful places existed. But at the same time, he was a little scared and decided to prepare for death when he met Her Highness. Ute told Shauna to pay attention to such a beautiful greenhouse, and she kept trying to get the young man to admit that Princess Ophelia was dangerous and should not be trusted. Ophelia was sitting in the living room and called Utah to come have breakfast. An unpleasant incident occurred during breakfast. Hot tea was spilled. The maid apologized to Her Highness for spilling tea on her dress. The princess calmly replied that everything was fine. Ute didn't dare go into the living room yet. He knew Shauna was right, but right now he needed time to calm down. He was worried that his stepsister might turn to evil again. Ophelia thought to herself that she needed a rest today because she'd already done a lot. She had released the stubborn Ute from the tower. At breakfast, they were both silent and feeling embarrassed. Ophelia had mixed feelings. For example, she was surprised to find herself sitting at the table with Ute. She was afraid she might catch some kind of infection from him. In a low voice, the girl politely informed Utah that from now on, they would always have breakfast together. She added that he had a lot to learn as a prince. The boy asked in surprise. The maids couldn't believe their ears that Ophelia had called him a prince. It didn't fit in their heads. Her Highness said that the young man would have to study such sciences as history, economics, humanities, and understand the rules of etiquette. She also understood that she would have to teach him imperial science, but that was still a long way off. Ophelia also warned him that he needed to learn fencing. Ute, having received so many instructions, decided that she was trying to kill him in this way. The princess at that moment admired him and compared him to a young aristocrat. The boy was haunted by bad thoughts and wondered what she was really up to. Embarrassed, Ute admitted at the table that he still didn't know how to use the cutlery properly because it kept rattling against each other. Ophelia reassured him that he had every right not to know how to do it because he hadn't learned to do it. The boy mentally got angry at the princess because it was all because of her. Her Highness announced that he would live in Rosa's palace. That was where Sitara lived. She added that from now on he would have new maids and asked how many he needed. Ute replied that he only needed Shauna, to which the girl suggested that it would probably be difficult for her to exercise alone with such a palace. The conversation was interrupted by a maid who wanted to tell Her Highness something. She announced that Lord Erhard had arrived. The young man continued to practice with the cutlery, but was nervous that they still rattled against each other. Ophelia was very nervous that Erhard had come and ordered the maid to escort him out. Out of surprise, the princess threw her fork and knife on the floor. Ute was surprised by this reaction and wondered what had happened. It was about Kirsten Kallman. Erhard Ophelia was tense because she was not expecting a visit from the man who had been her husband in her first life. She remembered that when they first met, she felt special in his eyes. But then he betrayed her, so now she has to avoid him. The young man offered Her Highness the use of his devices. He clarified that he had not yet had time to use them. Ophelia seemed to be brought back down to earth. It turns out she was so nervous that she dropped the equipment from her hands. Ute was startled when he saw the princess's reaction and regretted having brought it up at all. He said he could have eaten with his hands, but he immediately corrected himself, clarifying that it was indecent, and thought she had lost her mind as soon as she heard Kirsten's name. The boy dared to ask Her Highness who Lord Erhard was whom the maid had mentioned. Kirsten was waiting in the living room, having been informed by the maid that Mrs. Ophelia was ill and unable to receive guests at the moment. He asked the maid about this. The lord initially accepted this version but then doubted it. Perhaps Her Highness held a grudge against him? Ute apologized to the princess for asking her about the lord, but admitted that he was worried about how she reacted and that she now looked pale. Wondered again why she was so surprised by his visit. Was he really a bad person? He mentally assumed that he must have offended her. Ophelia replied with tears in her eyes that Kirsten Kallman Earhart is not a bad man, even a great one. He is a sorcerer. The guy was surprised and asked again. The princess said that from now on, when the owner of the magic tower disappeared, Lord Earhart should become his successor. In her mind, she wondered how such a great man could betray her so cruelly back then. The girl continued and said that such people are not interested in wealth. They have many other free privileges. She added that their greatness lies in their infinite magical power. Ute listened attentively to the princess's story about how when magic and witchcraft disappear, people with great power appear. These people know no boundaries, and that's exactly what Lord Kirsten is like Earhart. Ophelia told herself to stay calm and do nothing for now. She asked Utah to distract herself if he wanted to eat more. The guy replied that he had already eaten. The girl was worried that Jut might remember Kirsten's visit, and under certain circumstances might decide that she and he were in the same marriage. She understood that it was dangerous, and therefore she could not allow Ute to be so interested in this visit of Kirsten to her. But the boy was not going to give up and asked why such a great magician had come to Her Highness. He was quick to clarify that he didn't say that because he thought she wasn't pretty enough for such a person. The guy admitted that he had only read about mages in books on the history of the empire. Ophelia asked about books on the history of the empire. The guy realized that he had said too much. After all, the fact that he read books at all was a secret to Her Highness. The girl thought about it as she never allowed Utah to read books, especially those on imperial history. She assumed that Shauna must have brought them to him. Ute realized that he could be in big trouble because he had disobeyed the princess's orders. He wondered what he should do now and worried that Shauna might die because of him. Ophelia simply remained silent and showed no emotion. Later, she said that she needed to visit the emperor in the hospital and suggested that Utah take a look around the palace at that time. The boy tried to catch up with his sister and say that he was sorry for what happened to the emperor. The princess thought that he must be sorry for having disobeyed her at one time. Ute was nervous because he knew she wouldn't just leave it like that. But Ophelia, to her surprise, only smiled sweetly at the young man. The guy didn't understand what was happening because he remembered her as a completely different person, more cruel. He wondered why she had just left it at that. Even the maids all breathed a sigh of relief. Jut thought that was the end of him. He apologized to Shauna and promised to be more careful from now on. Meanwhile, Ophelia was once again convinced that she was still alive. She admitted that this 10-year-old child makes her so nervous that she feels like she might die from it. She hoped that Ute would forget about Kirsten's visit and was glad that she had managed to distract him for a moment. Suddenly, she was distracted from her thoughts by a maid who wanted to tell her something. It was a toy teddy bear. Ophelia was afraid that there might be a spell on the toy and it would grow over time. She asked nervously, "Who is this from?" The maid replied that it was a gift from Lord Kirsten Kallman Earhart because the young lady fell ill. She added that he promised to come back again as he really wanted to see Her Highness. Emma asked for further instructions regarding his arrival. Ophelia started screaming that they should tell him that she was no longer here, that she didn't want to see him. The maid asked what to do with Lord Earhart's gift then. The princess replied that they should return it, but the maid objected that it was against etiquette. The girl wondered what was wrong with this and why it violated etiquette. She thought that these were already bad times. Ophelia thought Kirsten was only making things worse with her behavior. She was also troubled by the fact that she always had to choose a new outfit for a meeting with the emperor. So she decided that when she became empress, she would ban these rules of luxury and extravagance. His Highness announced that Princess Ophelia had come to visit him. The girl always hated the time she had to spend with the emperor. He lived in the inner part of the Palace of the Sun. So this time, too, she decided to quickly finish the paperwork and leave. But when she entered the living room, she saw the emperor lying on the sofa. The girl decided that he was sleeping, so she came up with the idea of simply leaving the papers on the table, which was even beneficial to her. But then she heard the voice of His Highness asking why she had come. The princess was saddened that she had never been able to leave quietly and unnoticed. She greeted him and said that it was Ophelia. The emperor, who was her and Yuta's father, Kane's Dine Rydania, returned to her. He said she was too cruel. The girl did not understand where she had behaved incorrectly again. The emperor coughed and asked her to close the door. Ophelia decided she wanted to understand Utah's story. The old man said he was sick, but he knew who was making all this noise. He started shouting that he wanted to make him emperor. The emperor added that it shouldn't have been her. The girl thought she knew that. She also knew that he would die soon after the new year and had left a will in which he would pass the throne to Utah. The father asked his daughter why she was so callous and cruel. Here, Ophelia could not stand it and replied that she was the king's child, so she probably looked like her father. The king was angry at such words and called the girl a naughty creature. The girl was afraid that, as always, he would pour water on her head. This had already happened in a past life when many arrows flew at her, or in that life when she died of illness or was burned. The emperor insulted her even when she was with Ute and Kirsten. She expected such actions from the king today because then she could leave here in peace. A moment later, a glass of water flew towards her. He flew past her, barely missing her, as she had time to bow. The emperor coughed again and asked if she thought he was weak. He said she had killed her only brother. Ophelia tried to argue with him and said that he always blamed her. She added that if his son had been by a noble woman and not by the maid Sitara, he would not have abandoned him in the first place. The girl added that the king must be steadfast. She wished him much strength to act as he had intended earlier. Ophelia told him not to worry about Utah and that she would be the one to die at his hands. The old man said she must have gone mad. The princess reported that she was skillfully managing all his affairs, but everyone was waiting for him to get better. The emperor thought it was ridiculous that his daughter could die from little Ute. She confessed that Ute would become emperor when he turned 20. That was when he would become strong and be able to control the aristocrats. The emperor immediately shouted at his daughter and said that she couldn't just leave. His maid reported to Ophelia that His Highness had a bad cough. She gave orders to have him looked after. Soon the princess returned and asked the maid if she was his maid. She guessed that her father's voice had broken and she couldn't hear him well, but she heard him clearly saying that this time she would kill her brother. Ophelia told the maid that she should find people to take care of His Highness. She even threatened that if the workers didn't do this, they would be punished for it. But deep down, she knew that she could never truly love her father. Such an interesting conversation was overheard by a young man. The events are transferred to the palace of Princess Ophelia. She regretfully reported that no one wanted to be his teacher. She assured Utah that it wasn't his fault and that he shouldn't worry about it. The girl considered them all cowardly aristocrats. They were afraid to deal with her. Ophelia understood that they had no idea that if they gave Yuto a little knowledge, he would become the master and emperor of the country. The sister told Utah that they had no other choice, so she would start teaching him herself. He objected, saying that she must have a lot to do already. Princess Ophelia told him not to say that because he was a prince. But she understood that in this story, she really needed the emperor to be carefully looked after. Ophelia assured her younger brother that she would teach him. At the same time, the girl understood that such a soft character did not suit the real Ophelia at all. The princess finally saw that a distance had appeared between them. She worried in her mind that she had no choice but to teach him herself. But she said that if he had no questions, he could go to his room. The girl didn't want to see that face and wondered how terrible their relationship would become now. Ute went to his chambers with Shauna, but something was bothering him. He remembered Ophelia's conversation with the emperor's maid in the Palace of the Sun, but he couldn't hear what was being said then. He decided to go back to Ophelia's room and said he had a question for her. Ophelia was surprised that Ute had spoken to her first. She asked what he wanted. In her mind, she was worried about his activity and wondered what he wanted to know. The boy asked why she didn't kill him as soon as they left the tower walls. The princess was not at a loss and replied that, as she had said before, she could use it. Ute didn't understand anything. Ophelia explained that there was one thing he had to do when he grew up. She added that this was the only answer to his question. Ute stood calmly in place and just kept quiet. Left alone, the girl began to get nervous. She was worried that he had started coming so often. She would need to think things through carefully in the future to stick to the plan she decided. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. It was Amy, who suggested that Her Highness take a bath. Ophelia refused but told the maid that she could come in. The girl noticed that something had changed. She wondered why her clothes had been changed and even the mattress had become softer. Amy brought Her Highness a flower, but the princess was worried about why the maid was smiling like that. The worker said that this flower can only be found far in the mountains in the north. She confessed that she was afraid that the flower would wither, so she brought it here. Ophelia remembered hearing about the flower before it was a plant from the northern region that glowed brightly at night. The girl also mentioned that only aristocrats could receive this flower. The mining area in the north was an area where no one lived except for dangerous monsters. Her Highness understood that it was simply impossible to deliver the flower from there, so she asked who could have done it. Amy replied that Lord Kirsten had brought the plant Kalman Erhard. Ophelia was puzzled by this and declared that Kirsten must have used magic to do this. Amy confessed that her new outfit, mattress, and flower were all sent here by Lord Erhard. Her Highness remembered another gift from him, a teddy bear. She wondered why there were so many gifts. Now she understood why Amy was smiling like that. The maid reported that Hord Erhard said he would visit her soon. Ophelia began to wonder if this meant she would die soon. She couldn't let Kirsten bother her so often, but it was too early to do anything about it. A plan came to the girl's head and she turned to Amy. She asked the maid if she had any commoner's clothes, which she was very surprised to hear. The maid asked what she wanted to do with these clothes. From that moment on, a new life and adventures in the afterlife began with Amy, the princess's maid. The princess was known to everyone as a fraud, so death always followed her. But tonight she walked around the city like an ordinary person. At the same time, the lady should be pleased that Lord Erhard is courting her. That night, the princess went for a walk in the night city again. Amy was worried that someone might find out who they really were. She was also surprised by how they ended up in the suburbs. And how did Her Highness know about this place? The maid became nervous again when she saw the princess stumble. She was worried that her entire family might be punished if Her Highness hurt her leg. She also noticed that Ophelia's coat was torn, so she decided that now her family would definitely suffer from pain. Amy cried and begged Her Highness to return. The frightened maid thought that something terrible would happen if the princess met, for example, some drunk man. But on the way, they met a bloodied young man who cursed at the princess. Ophelia regretted why everything she had thought about had started to come true. Amy continued to catch up with the princess and beg her not to go far alone. Ophelia asked if someone was watching them. Her Highness felt that someone was following them. At the same time, the maid tearfully begged her to return to the palace. Ophelia could barely walk because the road was full of potholes. Amy felt sorry for her family. The princess reflected that no matter how much she spent on restoring these poor places, she would hardly be able to get anything out of it. Amy screamed hysterically for Her Highness to be careful. The girl warned the maid to stop crying like that because it could harm them. Continuing on, Ophelia noticed a small alley with many advertisements posted on the walls. She realized that here was what she was looking for. But soon Her Highness exclaimed that it was here. The princess crashed into the young man who was covered in drops of blood. She screamed and thought that was pretty harsh. Without raising her head, the girl thought she had smelled fish. The young man asked the girl what happened. Ophelia finally realized that the guy she met was covered in blood, and she was upset because it wasn't part of her plans. The next moment, the girl stumbled and her foot hit a pothole. In a panic, Ophelia realized that she would not be able to hold on and fall, but the road was covered with nails. After a few seconds, she began to think that if she flew forward, she would have to hug the boy. She also understood that if she fell backwards, she could be seriously injured. The young man grabbed her by the collar of her dress and tried to keep her on her feet. The girl remained silent. Then the princess coughed, and Amy hurried over to her, asking if she was okay. The stranger noticed that they were too noisy. The maid thanked her for her help, then asked who this man was, and how dare he treat her like that. Ophelia tried to calm the maid. The boy told Amy that the lady had brought her here on purpose, for she had a motive. He also drew her attention to the coachman in the distance and said that the same thing would soon happen to her. Amy hysterically began to ask the stranger what he meant. The young man admitted that slave traders gather in this alley and make deals. He added that all these advertisements on the walls are information about the sale of slaves. He ironically felt sorry for the servant girl and said that her mistress had probably already added her to the list for slave sale. But Amy did not believe it at once and began to accuse the young man of false information. Ophelia was frightened because she thought that now Amy would begin to beg her for mercy as usual and thereby make an unnecessary fuss. The princess began to comfort the sobbing Amy and promised that she would not hold her responsible for this. The young man mentally noted that this was the first time he had seen such an aristocratic woman pitying her maid. He wondered what they were doing in this area. He decided that he had scared them enough that they would soon leave, and he turned to go back and heard someone calling his name. Ophelia asked him to stay with Amy for a couple of minutes. The young man turned around in surprise and asked what they wanted from him. Ophelia replied that she did know the place very well, as he had noticed. But now she had something to find, and it was dangerous to take a maid with her. The princess confidently added that she knew he would come back for her anyway because he would be worried about her safety. The stranger didn't like what he heard. He shouted that he didn't care and that they should go home. Then the young man headed to the mysterious door and knocked on it. A boy opened the door for him who happily said that he knew he would be visiting today. The boy then made a remark to the young man and told him to stop. Frightened Amy was glad that the scoundrel was gone and told the lady that they had to get out of here. But Ophelia ignored them and continued on her way. The maid reminded her once again that it was dangerous here and that slave traders were gathering. The girl replied that she had important business here. They found themselves in front of a bar with a bright yellow sign. It was the gathering place of the Assassins' Guild. Ophelia confessed that she came here to buy that man. His name was Now. He was the most famous assassin who, due to poverty, decided to become a slave to the guild. It was too expensive, even very expensive and expensive. And Now was an important character in the plot of the novel and was to play an important role in Ophelia's future. Amy knocked on the door and announced that she had brought the lady tea and treats. The princess replied that she would miss the tea ceremony tradition today. Now sat in front of her and she asked him where these wounds came from. But he replied that all that was in the past. He admitted that the most important thing now is that she is his mistress. Ophelia liked this answer and marked it. Now wondered how he knew that smell. The princess emphasized that she was now his mistress, so he had to tell her where his injuries came from and why he was sold so easily. Ophelia knew that Now had excellent eyesight and an icy voice. Since becoming an assassin, he had become quite cruel. But whatever he is, he still loves his younger brother more than anything in the world. The princess continued to ask Now why his body was covered in bruises. She did not understand how a slave could be sold to her in such a state. According to the new plan that Ophelia came up with, she must restore justice because someone has so cruelly abused her slave. Now finally confessed that he was punished by his past master Giljean when he learned that he would now be sold to the aristocrats. Ophelia was surprised that he was already aware of her aristocratic affiliation. Now replied that it no longer mattered to him. He assured her that from that moment on, she was considered his mistress. The princess was surprised by what he said and noted to herself that he was too naive. But she decided to get to the point. She wondered how long he was going to stay on his knees and why he couldn't finally free himself. The next moment Now was almost free. The young lady removed the blindfold from his eyes and said that he was a fine boy. She clarified that according to tradition, it was the mistress who should remove it from her slave. When the young man saw the princess's face, he instantly remembered that scene in the night alley when she asked him to stay with her maid for a couple of minutes. Hysterically, he announced that he recognized her. The girl said her name was Ophelia Dine Rydani. She assumed that he must have heard her name before since she was the crown princess of this empire. Now was very surprised and understood what it meant to be in the palace if the princess was in front of him. Ophelia said that she wanted him to become her bodyguard, a hired worker. You'd overheard this conversation. He was worried that the princess needed a mercenary and therefore wanted to kill someone maybe. Now screamed that he could not carry out her order and kill the prince. But the girl denied that she had said such a thing. Quite unexpectedly, she said that she wanted him to kill her. She added that at the right time, he should kill her in the most painless way possible. The slave was surprised by such an order and could not understand anything. The boy said he didn't understand what she meant. Ophelia was silently glad she had taken his determination and categoricalness into account. She clarified that she had already prepared a detailed plan. The plan was that to the outside world they would appear to be working closely together and then stage her death as if it were a suicide. At the same time, she added that she had prepared a safe place where he could live peacefully afterwards. Then the princess threw jewels at his feet as proof. The lady said that it would all be his and decided that now everything would go as she had planned because he would never refuse such an offer. She thought that with this wealth, he would be able to live happily with his brother for the rest of his life, and even decided that she could tell him how to properly use these jewels. The princess was also about to explain to him what would happen to his slave contract now, but she was completely unexpectedly refused. Now said that even though he was her slave, he could not carry out such an order. According to the plot of the novel, Now was Uta's right-hand man, but he hated Ophelia more than anyone else. And it was he who betrayed her. Knowing this, the princess is now more afraid and apprehensive of him than anything else. But she can't believe that he refuses to kill her. Now admitted that he would rather she killed him like his mistress. But Ophelia still considered him a scoundrel who participated in human trafficking with the guild and hid it from her younger brother. The girl continued to bargain with him and even offered him a palace. The slave replied that it would be better if she just killed him. Now repeated once more that Her Highness would kill him. He said that if she threw jewels at him, thereby trying to kill him, he would remain unmoved and fulfill her wish. Ophelia wondered why he was so difficult to deal with, and did he really think she would let him go? But she decided it was too early to bring his younger brother, whom he loved more than anyone else in the world, into the picture. Suddenly, her thoughts were interrupted by someone, and she wondered who had decided to disturb her. Her Highness shouted that she was warning that she would miss the tea party. At the door was Ute, who apologized and said that she herself had told him that he could come at any time if he had any questions for her. Ophelia panicked and decided that she urgently needed to win Now over to her side before he met with Yuto. But the slave was too stubborn and insisted on his own way. And she also thought that if they were seen together in such a situation, they would misunderstand. Ophelia reiterated that she hoped he would accept her lucrative offer, but Now again insisted that she kill him. The girl felt terribly irritated by him. Then Her Highness opened the door and asked Ute what he wanted. He replied that he had something to say to his sister, but the princess said that all that would be for later and instead suggested to the surprised young man that he go with her to a festival in the capital. Ute asked if this festival was happening right now. The sister replied that it would be very interesting. Now sat silently at that time and had many questions in his mind. According to the original plot, a festival was held in the capital which Nai was also supposed to attend. He was a flower seller and a petty pickpocket to earn a little extra money. After all, his brother Now was a slave of the guild, so he could not be present at home all the time. Ophelia decided that she would use Nai as a hostage to get Now to fulfill her request. But Now continued to insist that he could not carry out this order and kill a member of the imperial family. The princess was upset because her plan had failed. She decided that she had to make him submit at any cost. The princess was also surprised by the behavior of Yuta, who behaved quite naturally here, even though he had been imprisoned in the tower for so long. An idea occurred to Her Highness. She said she was tired and would sit down, and Ute could go for a walk somewhere nearby at that time. The guy wanted to ask permission to leave again, but didn't finish and received cotton candy as a gift. Ophelia said he shouldn't call her by her first name here so as not to attract too much attention. Her Highness warned Ute not to go too far alone. The sister tied a scarf for the young man and explained that it had gotten colder. The little boy was very surprised and began to worry that she intended to leave him on the street. Ophelia waved at him and told him to have a good time and not worry about anything else. Yut was still worried and said he had to go. He thought that most of the time he didn't understand his sister's behavior. Now the princess was free and wondered where Nai was. Ute remembered that Shauna had given him some money before leaving. 5 shillings. The guy was happy and decided that he could have fun at the festival with this money. Yut was lost in his thoughts about where he should go. And suddenly a boy approached him and asked if he needed flowers. The young salesman began to persuade the young man to buy flowers for only 5 shillings. This young salesman was now Nai's brother. He added that by purchasing the flowers, Ute could give them to someone and make them happy. Yut wondered why he needed flowers. Ophelia turned when she heard someone call her sister. She was surprised that it was Ute, and at the same time upset that he had returned so quickly and she hadn't even had time to find Nai yet. Her Highness remembered how she had asked him not to call her princess, but she had not expected him to call her sister. The girl asked if he had really returned so soon. Ute gave the princess flowers and said that he had just bought them for her. Ophelia said they smelled nice. The boy was confused, but thanked his sister for letting him go for a walk. The princess replied that he would still have to study economics when they returned. She began to explain and said that if he was buying flowers in exchange for a scarf, then this math was wrong because a scarf costs 400 gold. Ute asked more questions, and the girl clarified that he would study everything more carefully when he returned. The young man noticed that this scarf was missing and began to wonder where he could have lost it. Yut remembered the little guy selling flowers and the burly man next to him who had called out to Nay to show the flowers to the buyer. The small trader suggested taking a look. Ute remembered everything and started shouting that it was Nai from whom he had bought the flowers. Ophelia was very surprised in her mind that he had met him. The guy planned that they could just go and find him right now, but Ophelia interrupted him. The princess still couldn't believe that it was Nai who robbed her brother. Her Highness suggested that they go together but regretted that she could not catch up with him. She was angry that she had actually come here to meet Nay, but not in this way. Ute saw the thief and shouted that it was the child. He started shouting and accusing him of stealing his things. But the next moment, Ophelia and Ute froze in surprise. They heard cries for help. Nai was lying on the floor screaming for someone to help him. The princess and her brother stood before a burly man. Ophelia remembered that she had already seen this giant in a past life. He had robbed young Nai. He made Nay steal and then took everything for himself. Kramus turned to Nai and asked him why he had robbed Utah. He turned to Ophelia and Utah and assured them that he would teach the little one a lesson and they could go. The young man guessed that the giant was lying. He began to think that the scarf was given to him by the princess, and the boy was screaming for help. The large man began to demand that Nai give up the scarf, but he stubbornly resisted. Nai held the scarf tightly and shouted that he could save his brother this way. Ophelia guessed what was going on. It turns out he met her when they were chasing him to collect the money. He didn't want to give up because of his brother. The girl didn't know what to do next and turned to Utah. At that time, the brother wondered if he could stand up for the little one since the princess was nearby. Ophelia once again addressed the boy by name. She wondered what they should do with this guy. Yat said that in his opinion, stealing is wrong, but leaving him here alone is also wrong. He added that it would be bad if this child got hurt. Ophelia replied that he was a good boy. The princess began to call out loudly to the guard. She gave the order to force that rascal to beg for mercy. Jat was surprised and asked if the guards were really following them. The princess replied that she was worried that he would feel uncomfortable, so she ordered them to hide until she called them. Ophelia went up to Nai and asked if he could come up. She hoped in her mind that he would be grateful. She held out her hand to him. Ophelia was mentally glad that it was Ute who helped her get closer to Nay. Stammering Nai thanked the girl for giving him a helping hand. The princess reported that the boy fell asleep because he was tired. She wondered if he was really a good-looking boy, or was it all just because of his brother? Her Highness was pleased that Nai was now in her hands. Now was angry and could not hold back his emotions. Ophelia told him to calm down. She decided that she needed to prepare for the next step. She asked her slave if he was now willing to kill her as she had asked, or was he going to die here with his brother? The young man regretfully said that he couldn't do anything while Nai was with her. He said he would become her servant forever and assured her that he would be there for the rest of his days. Ophelia noted that her plan had worked. She said he should kill her with just one blow and do it as carefully as possible. The princess promised that she would tell the details later and now replied that he would obey her. She thought Now was quite naive. Ophelia suggested leaving the room so as not to disturb Nay. Her Highness took something out of the drawer and told the young man to take it. Now wondered what she had given him. The princess explained that it was a precious engagement ring made of precious stones. It could help change a person's appearance. The girl said that from now on she would call the slave Sir Philip, but he had to stick to his new identity and be careful. Now asked if he could ask Her Highness a question. Ophelia asked, "What is the essence of the question?" The young man said that he thought a lot when he was alone. He asked, why should a man who has everything die? Ophelia was confused and said she would like now to explain everything. But then Her Highness corrected herself and called him Philip. The maids were worried that this had happened on their shift. They were worried that if the princess found out, they would be killed. Ophelia informed the two boys that from this day forward, Nye would be living in the armory. She told Utah to make friends. The girl added that she had someone to introduce them to. Ophelia told Utah that from now on this man would serve him. She introduced the stranger as Philip. The young man also said that his name was Philip. The girl noted that, thanks to magic, he became a completely different person, and that's wonderful. Ute doubted that this thin and weak-looking young man could serve him. The essence of now spoke, addressing the little prince that he would do whatever he ordered him to do. Ophelia made a remark to Philip because he is no longer a mercenary but a servant, so he should make his appearance simpler. The young man apologized and said that he was just not used to it yet. He thanked the little prince and Nye, but Ute replied that it was unnecessary. Ophelia daydreamed about the next events of the novel. The festival is over, but winter will soon come, which means the emperor will die. That's when the plot of the original story and the future in which Ophelia is 100% certain to die will begin. But now she was doing everything she could to prevent a terrible death at the hands of Utah. She must be killed by now. Philip asked Her Highness what had happened to Nay. He clarified that it didn't seem like he was left in the palace because of threats. The girl replied that he was left there as Utu's companion. It was a place to live and a guarantee of safety for Nye. He was also promised a large sum of money so that his brother would no longer have to work so hard. Ophelia asked if she should have taken better care of him. Philip told her not to joke like that because he was still a child. The young man began to threaten that if she harmed Naya, Ophelia interrupted him and began to joke that he would then kill her for it, which was what she needed. Philip asked that Her Highness be more serious. Then strange things started happening, and the young man shouted, calling for the princess. He was protecting Ophelia, and she was screaming in surprise and fear. Philip asked what the smoke was and considered it to be the smell of the princess. But the princess denied it, but did not explain what seemed so obvious to her. Ophelia guessed that only one person could have used such magic. Amy came up apologizing to Her Highness and saying that they had warned the uninvited guest that they did not want him here. She also confessed that while the princess and prince were at the festival, Lord Kirsten came and bewitched the garden. Philip was irritated by what he heard and said that they had to catch this magician immediately. Ophelia assured him that this was not an assassination attempt, but simply a gift from a guest. The young man was not at ease and said that such a step on his part was a declaration of war. The princess warned him to look under his feet. The boy was trying to catch the hare and was shouting that he had to do it. At the same time, Ophelia understood that now was right. Kirsten would not give up. He would continue his actions. He will give gifts to get attention. The girl was worried that if he was always around, various rumors would appear. But apparently, that's what he wants. Her Highness noted that the bunny was extremely cute. She asked Kirsten why he kept coming to her. Suddenly, Ophelia decided to visit Erhard's estate, although before that, she had categorically refused to go there. The maid wondered what she wanted as they rode. Her Highnesses announced that they had arrived at the place. She was already being watched from the window. Ophelia and Amy went to the estate. The princess came to Kirsten, but she had doubts. Wasn't it a mistake? A voice was heard in the palace asking if the princess had arrived, and ordering her to be taken to the drawing room. Kirsten was taking a bath at the time. Ophelia was convinced that this all really did look like a mistake. As she waited for him in the living room, she wondered what his true intentions were toward her. But maybe she should have continued to ignore him. The girl remembered past lives when he had betrayed her, sending her to execution to take the throne, and she worried that he wanted to do it again. She wondered what kind of person he was. Ophelia realized that she knew Utah well from his past roles, but not the princess at all. So Kirsten probably had no choice but to go against the princess. Kirsten entered the living room, pleased that Her Highness had come to see him. The princess guessed that he always wanted power, and she didn't understand why she hadn't noticed it before. She decided that Kirsten must have been hiding it well, but she told him to dry himself off because he always looked so flawless. The young man assured that he would have prepared better for the meeting if she had warned him about her visit earlier. He asked why such a beautiful lady had come to visit them in the middle of the night. Ophelia, because he himself had never given advance notice of his arrival. The princess felt sorry that he was ruling her as he pleased. But she said that she had come with a request, but not to him, but to Sir Asad. Asad Erhard was Kirsten's older brother. The older brother was very surprised. Why was the princess looking for him and not Kirsten? Ophelia admitted that she had heard about Asad's excellent martial arts skills and would like to ask him to become a fencing teacher for the prince. The young man said that it was a great honor for him. Disappointed, Kirsten asked if she had come all this way just for this. He suggested that they continue the conversation in the living room where it would be safer. Ophelia admitted that she had recently faced danger. She remembered the scene of buying flowers from Ney at the festival. Therefore, she realized that constantly avoiding dangerous situations would not work for her. The girl compared them to a sword. The princess clarified that it all depends on how to resist them, but suddenly she screamed, unable to pick up the sword from the floor. She was disappointed as she had thought the sword would be much lighter. Kirsten noted that sword owners should be very careful and consider all risks. Ophelia admitted to herself that she couldn't underestimate the magic in this case. Asad said that these were good words and promised to give the princess a dagger. Kirsten, in turn, suggested that it would be better to get down to business. Ophelia said she had no more business to attend to, so she had to go. She also apologized for the late visit. Kirsten didn't agree with the princess leaving so soon. He said he would not be deceived by the lady again, and she could say whatever she wanted. The princess noticed that he had acted very cunningly, but she still could not confess her feelings to him. Ophelia admitted that the prince also needed a general education teacher. She decided that it was best to keep Kirsten under supervision. The Lord said he agreed to teach him and would do so according to Her Highness's wishes. The girl thought that she should always have a dagger at hand as well. The princess added that there was one more thing Kirsten asked ironically. What else did she need? She said there was something only Kirsten could do, Erhard. She wondered could he revive these flowers and cast a preservation spell on them? If it was lavender, Her Highness said that these flowers were simple but precious to her, like a precious and memorable gift. As Kirsten used her magic, a soft and warm glow appeared. This brought back fond memories for Ophelia. The young man asked permission to say a few words as he had a different opinion on the matter. The girl asked what he meant. Ophelia began to ask hysterically what was going on here. Kirsten clarified that there is no method that would allow you to control a dangerous object. He added that the bigger and more precious the gift, the better. The princess told him not to send her any more gifts. The young man asked the reason for this refusal. He gave her the sword and said that now it was hers. Kirsten said that Her Highness deserved the best. But he, unlike the one who only gave her flowers, could afford much more expensive gifts. The Lord added that the more expensive the gift, the more precious it is to the person. Ophelia said she had one more condition. She asked that no further attention be drawn to the imperial palace. The princess soon noticed that from that day on, Kirsten had become almost invisible. This worried her. She decided that she needed to keep an eye on him because she didn't know his intentions. An imperial state council was held in the palace. Herzog Sarkart was Ophelia's maternal grandfather. He asked the girl if she had enjoyed the festival and recommended that she now take up state affairs. The princess asked what important things she had to do and decide today. He reported that a group of healers had recently been working in the slums of the city. Sarkart clarified that according to rumors, this group heals people by tearing their bodies apart and then sewing them back together with thread. The princess thought they were doctors and said that they needed to increase their number. Grandfather was dissatisfied with Her Highness's response. He said that these people should be destroyed because all treatment should only be received from a priest in the temple. Ophelia wondered if he really meant that only the wealthy and prominent would be treated. She decided it was better not to deal with these matters and to think about her answer to Kirsten. Her Highness was distracted by other matters, and they began to ask her if she was listening to the report. Meanwhile, in the courtyard, the maid found the prince hiding from Nai, who was looking for him and calling out. The worker told Youth that he should return to the palace because he had a history lesson with Lord Kirsten. Yut had a bad feeling that day. Kirsten talked about the wisdom of the West and the East in class. Yet guessed who was in front of him. He remembered the day his sister had gotten very nervous when she heard his name. And now this person had become his teacher. The prince decided that he urgently needed to find out if this was an order from the princess herself. He turned to Sir Assad. Oot said he knew Sir Kirsten was a magician, so maybe he bewitched the princess? The boy told the prince that he was Assad Erhard and Kirsten is his younger brother. Ophelia, everything himself, but he hadn't seen Her Highness since the day of the festival. The princess was overwhelmed with work. Her advisors were yelling at her to prepare a balance sheet and much more. The prince wondered why his sister had introduced him to Ney and what he meant to her. He decided they might be half-brothers. Jet thought that now they would have to compete with each other so that the weaker one would leave. The prince stood up and was about to leave the class. The teacher asked him if he was uncomfortable, but he replied that he was just not in the mood. Shauna found him in the garden and asked what he was doing here. She asked why he had left in the middle of class and suggested that he had done so to avoid having lunch alone with Her Highness. Ute remembered that the princess had indeed said that they would have dinner together, but now it was likely that Nai would join them too. He didn't understand why the princess still considered him her enemy. Shauna said that lunch would be in the garden. The prince noticed the flowers he had given to Her Highness. Amy confirmed that it was indeed them, and added that Ophelia had asked Lord Kirsten to cast a preservation spell on them. What did Ute think his sister was up to? Meanwhile, Ophelia in the conference room asked them to finish their work for today as she already had a prince waiting for her. She added that she was a problem child, but Sarkart quickly caught up with her. The princess understood that she had to choose. Would she continue her conversation with such a prominent politician and duke as well as a maternal relative? Or would she dine with Ute, who would later kill her? Victory was Ute's. The princess decided that she had to get out of here as soon as possible. Ute wondered why his sister had kept the flowers at all and even promised to always have lunch together from now on. He heard footsteps and exclaimed that the princess had arrived. They were the maids with Ney. They reported that the princess had some business, so she asked him to dine with Ney. The boy wished the little prince a good appetite. Ophelia was glad that she had managed to get away from the duke, but at that moment, someone had come into the drawing room. So now she was worried and regretted leaving them alone. The princess stopped in front of the great palace of the God of Honor. She wondered why she was here. Before that, in the drawing room of her palace, a stranger had said that he had not seen Her Highness for a long time. The guest greatly surprised Ophelia. This guest turned out to be Sir Assad Erhard, who introduced himself. Her Highness asked what brought him to their imperial council today. The girl was disturbed by the fact that Duke Sarkart, a prominent political figure himself, requested a meeting with Assad. She was worried that this young man might become part of Duke Sarkart's lavish dinner party, so she decided that she had to shut him up before he said anything too much. Ophelia addressed Sir Assad by name. He, in response, asked why she had come to their estate so late. She was not ready to hear about such frank requests, especially in the presence of other people. Duke Sarkart pondered over what he had heard. The princess was saddened that everything had become known and asked Sir Assad why he had come to them. The young man said that he would very much like to show Her Highness all the grandeur of the Grand Palace. Ophelia agreed to go on the tour right now. As they walked, Assad informed the princess that the wind was getting stronger. The girl wondered what all this was for. She understood that the Erhard family was not interested in politics, so why did he want to be a part of a love scandal with the princess? The young man assured Ophelia that he meant something completely different. She said she was glad that he understood everything. He dared to say that the princess had a leaf in her head and he wanted to help remove it. Assad confessed to the princess that he had a hard time communicating with people because apart from his stupid brother Kirsten and his fencing lessons, there was no one and nothing else in his life. Ophelia replied that he didn't need to apologize. She suggested that he take his coat and move on. He said she could leave it. The young man said that Her Highness had a pale complexion. The lady was nervous. Was it really that noticeable? Then Assad told them to go because the patriarch was waiting for them. Ophelia didn't understand why the patriarch wanted to see her. She had agreed to go on this excursion only to escape from Duke Socrates. The patriarch asked Her Highness if she would really let those doctors go so easily. The princess was upset and decided that the meeting should continue. She was told that she had to take responsibility for their arrest. Asid offered her tea. The girl sat there wondering what to do next. She understood that the priest had sided with the aristocrats, but she could not go against them. Although she kept now by her side, she was still unsure of the future course of events. Ophelia said that the imperial palace would encourage doctors. The patriarch said that this might provoke opposition and wanted to know the reason for this decision. The princess replied that she was not obliged to explain it. She also added that she would always stand her ground regardless of the consequences, because she understood that even if she pleased them, they would still obey Utah. The princess clarified that people need doctors and they should provide them. She understood that she would face a lot of criticism, but she heard the patriarch laugh and say that he understood. The priest added that he thought Her Highness was a good person. Ophelia was very surprised by this. Assad was happy and told the patriarch that Her Highness had not let them down. He admitted that he had always considered her a kind and gentle person, but not everyone could understand her. He returned to the princess and said that he and the patriarch supported her idea. The young man also said that he had heard from Nai how much the princess had helped him. Ophelia denied that she was completely unkind, explaining that an evil person cannot become good by doing just one good deed. She noticed that she often wanted to sleep recently and had a rapid heartbeat. This was the only feeling she had. Asid reassured her and said that the child she saved on the street considered her a good person. The princess did not think this was a sufficient argument because she considered Nai a smart boy, but too naive who believed everyone. But at the same time, Ophelia understood that there was no one who would consider her an unkind person. At tea, the princess asked the patriarch what she was drinking. He replied that it was herbal tea that one of the guests had offered him. He decided that the princess looked very tired. The priest also asked if he should call her escort, but the girl refused. Instead, Ophelia asked for a priest to be sent for to the imperial palace. She had business with him. She saw her reflection in the tea and became angry. The girl decided that she really needed to sleep after all her true emotions were coming out. Those present said they would leave and she could rest. She remembered days in the distant past when she cried constantly. Now she decided to rest so that all bad thoughts would leave her head or she would lock them in the tower. She imagined the tower to be even higher than the one in which Jut was held captive. She was sad and felt sorry for Utah because he had gone through suffering and pain, and it was all because of her. In this way, she simply calmed herself and prepared for her imminent death. But someone was standing under the window. In her mind, Ophelia apologized to Utah. Assad was watching her. Her Highness heard footsteps and someone addressing her. Younger Lord Erhard announced that they needed to return to the palace. At that time, a young man was walking down the street being shouted at to stand still. One of the men shouted that he didn't dare ignore him. The young man who walked quickly was Isaac Belarevin. They continued to shout at him and called him a commoner who could not do such a thing to the Duke himself, who had studied at the academy and knew 3 languages. Assad asked permission from Ophelia to escort her home. On the street in the same place, Isaac was called worthless. The young man and the princess became involuntary witnesses to that scene, but they paid no attention. The princess was upset that she still hadn't managed to get out and finish her work in time to have lunch with Yuti. She hoped the children had gone out to play after lunch and wondered if she should go and check on them. Ophelia thought that Ute was happy and having a good time with Nay. She was sure that these 2 boys got along well with each other. But she saw a different picture and wondered how this was possible. She couldn't figure out what had happened here while she was gone. Ute was angry because the princess had promised to have dinner with him on time. Ophelia asked the boys if they had eaten yet. The prince turned to Her Highness. Here, the princess's younger brother realized that she never broke her promises. And this time, she'd also done everything possible to make it on time. She asked Yuta if he liked the boy Nai. The princess understood Yuta's mood and was worried that he might make a fuss. So she decided to calm him down. She said that skipping the afternoon class was normal. She asked the children if they would like to have tea with her. Ute turned around and refused. He explained that he had homework to do from Sir Kirsten. The girl was surprised. Ophelia didn't understand this reaction and blamed it all on her, and she just wanted to be together. The upset Nai asked what he should do now. The princess didn't understand and asked again. Nai replied that he looked very upset and asked if it was because of him. Ophelia wondered if this was human nature. The princess wondered if Ute was jealous, but she decided that it couldn't be he was just still afraid to get close to her. Nai admitted that during lunch, Ute kept looking at his watch and waiting for his sister. The guy added that Her Highness should apologize to the prince because every longing has its own reason, and this case is no exception. He added that she had no choice but to resolve the issue herself. Ophelia wondered if he was just a 10-year-old boy. She wondered if Ute was really jealous or if Nai had simply misunderstood. She was upset because, in her opinion, she had taken everything into account to follow the plan. Her Highnesses informed her that the meeting with the aristocrats would continue this afternoon. The girl thought that it was all Ute's fault. Ophelia decided that she would not allow him to disrupt her daily routine now. The princess asked Kirsten if he had canceled his classes for today. The young man replied that he would have classes with Sir Assad after lunch because physical activity was also important. Kirsten suggested that Her Highness take the flowers. Ophelia replied that she would not accept anything from him because she had already told him so. The young man replied that this rejection broke his heart, but he didn't know how to show her his sincere feelings. He asked Her Highness why she was always so cold to him. Ophelia asked Sir Kirsten what brought him here. She added that he always complains that she is unfriendly to him, but still comes to her. Sir began his frank conversation. Kirsten asked the princess to come closer. Ophelia was unpleasantly surprised by this request. The young man assured him that he would tell him everything and asked him to listen carefully. The princess was worried that this might be a trap. She expressed her hope that he would not be capable of harming Her Highness. Kirsten replied, "How dare he behave like that?" He asked permission to end his conversation. The young man began to tell the reason why he wanted to see the princess. The girl noticed the strange look in his eyes. Ophelia was surprised by Kirsten's next actions and asked if he was okay. He replied that he was fine. The girl screamed that she was in pain. Sir Kirsten apologized and said he would tell me everything later. Suddenly, he disappeared, and Ophelia guessed that he had used a teleportation spell. She was worried if he was okay. It was the first time she had seen him so strange. The novel's original plot described Utah's childhood as a series of identical days where he was always alone. That's why he needs love and care now and is jealous of his sister for Naya. Ophelia understood that she could not give him this love. She must keep her distance at all costs. The girl stroked Yuta's head and heard him call for his mother. He continued to call his mommy in his sleep and cried. The princess mentally felt sorry for the boy. The next day, Ute went for a walk and noticed that it was a beautiful sunny day. He remembered that he had a wonderful dream last night, so he was in a good mood now. The prince noticed that he had pain in his chest area, but expressed hope that everything would be fine today. He decided he had to go now because class was about to start soon. Ute saw the sleeping princess and was very surprised. He was afraid that she wouldn't move and assumed that she might have died. The prince also noticed that she looked pale. Suddenly, the boy fell to the ground and screamed. He was worried that he would wake her up. Ophelia woke up and asked what happened. Judd admitted that he thought the princess was not breathing. He himself found it strange how frightened he was for her. Her Highness said that classes would begin soon. She recommended that he speak to Nay if he had any questions. The prince was upset that the subject was about Nay again. He suddenly felt that pain in his chest again. Ophelia said that he didn't have to do what she advised him to do. She also added that the place would hurt less if he found some friends. Ute was surprised that the princess knew about his pain in that place and asked about it. The sister replied that everyone feels that pain at some point. She said that she couldn't always be there, so he had to find people he could trust. She admitted that Ute is the closest person to her. Ophelia had made up her mind that he would always be her little brother, no matter what people said. She told him that. Her Highness told him to go because he would be late for class. Ute went and told his sister to rest. The boy walked away thinking that he hadn't expected the lady to call him his younger brother. He decided that Her Highness was also suffering from a similar chest pain. Class taught us that throughout the history of empires, happy families work together. Even if close friends were enemies, they would unite to do the same thing. Kirsten read a phrase from the book, "All you see is not all," and asked to try to understand it. Yet repeated these words in his mind and thought about it. He thought he could worry the princess because she had everything she wanted in life. The prince suggested that she might also be suffering from ice fragments. Sir Kirsten said that they were finishing with this phrase and warned that after the break, they would move on to the main class. Yut decided that he needed to eat a lot of sugar as it was good for his brain. Sir informed him that this dessert was the Empire's specialty. Nye admitted that he was happy because he could taste the various desserts of the Empire. The teacher added that it was thanks to the princess that peace had reigned in the Empire. Kirsten said they would learn all about it when they got to that part of the program. But he said her abilities were amazing. She acted faster than time, so people sometimes disagreed with her laws. Nye agreed that she was an amazing person. Sir also agreed that she was a good person, even if people don't understand it yet. At that moment, Ute thought that she was simply perfect, and he was sure of it. But Nye admitted that he thought it looked like it would disappear soon. He saw Utah's frightened reaction and asked why he was so tense because he could just imagine it. Boot replied that Ophelia was always looking somewhere in the distance. Nye confirmed that the prince had spoken the truth, but they were all surprised that this was the first time he had spoken to them. The prince guessed that it might make her feel better if he thought about his friends. Kirsten announced that they would have a test after the break. Seeing how nervous the prince was, he added that they would easily handle him if they listened carefully to everything. Oot turned to Sir Kirsten to ask him something. He asked the teacher if the princess had a close friend she could trust with everything. Nye started screaming as all the documents and paper started flying around the classroom. Kirsten replied that she had a friend in Her Highness. Oot noticed that Sir Kirsten's eyes had changed color. The teacher said that this friend was Isaac Bellereven. The patriarch shouted at the stranger in the back and demanded that he stop. Suddenly, he fell to the floor. The patriarch sat and reprimanded someone who wanted to step on the old man. The man behind the priest asked him to maintain his honor. The stranger whom the priest was chasing said that he was going to earn a living and did not understand why the patriarch was shouting like that. The patriarch called him a scoundrel. This stranger turned out to be the priest, Isaac Bellereven. The patriarch said that a priest cannot look like that. Isaac announced that he would be resigning as a priest today. The patriarch began to demand that he immediately remove this strange mask. The man said that he no longer wanted to hold this position. The old patriarch began to wonder how could he have even contacted such a person at such an age. He began to ask what the young man was going to do next. Isaac replied that he would become a doctor. The young man said that he felt a certain talent for this and added that he was an adult and could decide everything himself. The patriarch said that he was too old for such conversations and threatened that the boy would leave the temple only because of his corpse since he had no faith. Isaac admitted that he was still working on it and needed time. The patriarch, to his surprise, thanked him for this and said that he had one request for him. He reported that the princess needed a priest, so he ordered the young man to go to the imperial palace. But the young man replied that he hated the place. But the patriarch objected and said that this was wrong because the princess is the only one who protects doctors. He recommended that he go to the palace and be on her side, then he would have no problems. The old man swore that this was his last request to him. The patriarch lamented that he was a difficult child. But he also admitted that he has so much divine power like no one else. That's why he's sad, because he would be the best next patriarch. Sir Assad, who visited the patriarch, asked why he hated the temple so much. After all, it was the famous priest, Isaac's. The minister said he would tell him about it next time. Assad thought it would be good to know the reasons. The students were taking their first test with Sir Kirsten. Prince Ute thought he had written it well because he had practiced a lot and it included the topic they had studied yesterday. Sir Kirsten said he checked the prince's answers and asked if he really understood the phrase, "All you see is not all there is." The boy replied that he understood everything the way he taught them. The teacher asked if he understood her correctly because his mother Sitara's death and the rumors about Her Highness were all somehow connected. He added, was the death of his mother Sitara connected to the rumors about Her Highness? The prince admitted that he hadn't thought about it at all because he was a prisoner and didn't have enough time to figure it out. Kirsten noted that if he were in his place, he would have paid more attention to this. Ute wondered why he was asking this. Was this also a test? Sir explained that he simply thought about it from a completely different perspective. Little Nye thought it was happening again, the battle of minds between Kirsten and Utah. He mentally wished they had done it somewhere else. At one time, Nye received a letter from his older brother warning him to stay away from these imperial families. The boy asked the prince if this test was difficult for him. The prince replied that it was. Nye was glad that he had finally been answered and thought it was because of his calmness. He also wondered if the prince really thought he was the only one with a sister. After all, Nye also had a brother at home. The little boy remembered his brother with regret. He had replaced his parents who had died, and now he worked hard and hard. Philip approached him in the courtyard, but Nye was afraid that he had done something wrong. He did not understand why the prince's guards were watching him. The boy was offended because the young man had pushed him, but Philip told him that he had something in his pocket. Nye didn't expect to see chocolate there. He shouted and asked who could have put it there. The young man admitted that life in the palace was not as easy as he had thought. The boy Nye sat, and it seemed to him that everything around him had become tense. It was as if Sir Kirsten had arrived. He decided that he did not like Her Highness, even despite his determination. The teacher called the boy by name. The little one was confused and turned to Sir Kirsten. He replied that he could simply be called a teacher. Nye noted that he felt no hatred for his teacher. He thought something was bothering him. Kirsten said he had checked the boy's answers on the test. He asked if he really didn't understand the importance of studying. The little one grabbed his head and decided that he had been exposed. He replied that if he ever went outside the palace, he would be able to give advice and count the number of loaves of bread. The teacher asked for his hand in marriage, and Nye was glad that it was chocolate again. Kirsten said that considering the amount of sweets he eats, he is capable of more than counting bread. The teacher closed his eyes and was about to say something, but Nye decided that he wasn't wrong, and that was it. Sir didn't understand this reaction, but his eyes changed in a strange way, and the boy noticed it. He started calling for Nye, but he was already running away, full of confidence that he had made the right decision. The boy was scared and knew he couldn't hide in the palace grounds, but he remembered the back door used by the maids. Suddenly, he collided with the princess, and they both screamed. Ophelia asked Nye why he was here. The boy in response also asked what she was doing here, but added that it was more important to deal with the teacher right now. Her Highness asked if he was talking about Kirsten. The guy replied that he was possessed. Nye began to tell me that his neighbor had told him that the eyes were the mirror of the soul, and the color of his eyes had changed, so he was the devil. Ophelia said that there was a legend about it. Nye was surprised because he didn't expect her to believe him. He admitted that he was very scared when he saw it. He added that only God's representatives, priests, could drive away this evil, but he had never seen them. The boy apologized to Her Highness and asked if she was really worried about his teacher, Sir Kirsten, as he thought she was. Ophelia was surprised and told him that he really understood the situation. She assured him that everything was fine. The girl added that she would take care of her feelings, but first of all, she had to be confident in her actions. The princess remarked to Nye that he should take his studies more seriously and asked if he was not interested in them at all. He replied that he was. The boy considered himself a fool. Her Highness promised that she would not force him, but added that knowledge was very useful. Nye took out of his pocket and offered Her Highness 3 chocolates. Ophelia heard a man enter the palace and say that he was a priest. He added that he had come here because the princess had called him. The princess told Nye that he had to go. The boy was upset and decided that she was waiting for someone. He asked if she was going to go too. Her Highness replied that she had something to do. Ophelia asked Nye that if the devil did something to Sir Kirsten, they should call someone for help, right? The boy wondered what it all meant and remembered his brother's words, who had asked him not to pay attention to anything here. But he mentally noted that Ophelia looked happy now. He wondered what she was thinking about. He also thought she was smiling, as if she was about to disappear, but at the same time he was sure that she would cope with everything. In Nye's opinion, everything would be as the princess herself wanted. The princess asked the guest if he was the priest Isaac Beleverin. The girl introduced herself as Princess Ophelia Dine of Rydania. She also thanked him for accepting her invitation. Ophelia noted that even in front of such an infamous princess as her, he kept his face well. Her Highness reported that the imperial palace was noisy because of the children. The girl said that he only had to check on their health. The young man was surprised and asked if he had heard about the children. She decided for herself that even if Kirsten did something, she could find a solution that would relieve her of all her worries. She just needed some painkillers from the priest. Ophelia's thoughts were that she didn't know how she was going to die, whether she would be hanged or buried alive. But she needed medicine to keep her from feeling any of that. So Isaac had to trust her completely to get what she needed from him. The princess thought she had impressed him enough, even at their first meeting. Ophelia decided it was time to put on a show. She thought she wouldn't leave the palace until the medicine was ready. Isaac asked the princess what she knew about him. While Ophelia was choosing her words, the young man said that this was their first meeting, and it was quite surprising that she knew his name. The girl got away with it and said that she should know the names of all the guests at the palace a priori. Isaac agreed with this answer, but the lady could see how tense he was. The young man remarked to Her Highness that she should not sleep here. Ophelia asked if he was bored, and he replied that of course not. He ironically added that he was the princess's last shred of conscience, so she should listen to his reproaches while he was still here. The princess was surprised and decided to herself that if he didn't make the medicine on time, she would show him this. Isaac looked around in surprise and noticed that this was the famous imperial palace. The priest examined Prince Utah and concluded that he was 136 centimeters tall, 32 kilograms, and had all the signs of nutritional imbalance visible from the outside. About Naya that he was 133 centimeters, 30 kilograms, and had rather fragile bones. Isaac said that the boys are significantly smaller than their peers. You'd thought that he was taller than Nye, but still quite small. Nye was upset that he was the smallest in the place. Isaac reassured them that they were at the age when children were growing rapidly. Therefore, they should eat well, sleep well, and get enough exercise. He added that then they would be able to grow quickly. Ophelia watched them and decided that perhaps now was the moment when she could ask him for medicine. She called Isaac to come with her because she wanted to tell him something in secret. The priest asked in surprise. Ute reflected that he had thought she was like all adults, open, and she had her own skeletons in the closet. He was worried that it was Isaac who had appeared. The maids thought he might be her secret lover. The prince did not expect that they would think that he was her secret lover. Isaac asked Ophelia if she wanted him to make the poison. She asked, "Isn't this a painkiller?" But she was angry in her mind. Why would he call it poison? The young man remembered the words of the patriarch who had assured him that Her Highness was the only one who would be able to protect the doctors. He said that it was poison after all. He asked if Her Highness didn't know that nobles were using poison to create a painkiller. The girl replied, embarrassed that she didn't know. Isaac told Her Highness that he would not help her kill other people. He respected her right to burn them or boil them alive, but without his help. The princess had previously admitted that she had enjoyed her secret meeting with the man from the temple. One of the maids remarked to Amy, how could she say such a thing to Prince Yut? Amy replied that he might be interested. Yut replied that he had some. According to her, Ophelia was with a real handsome man with golden hair at the time. Rumors really spread quickly. The maid confessed that it was the priest Isaac from the same temple. Nye told Amy that it all sounded pretty strange. The boy said that he had already been alone with Her Highness and thought that she had simply come to see Priest Isaac. Amy started screaming and proving that she was right. Ute looked alarmed. He asked them to stop carrying this nonsense and said that they had no right to discuss the princess's personal life. The prince asked Philip to add something. The young man was confused and asked why him. The boy clarified that he was often with Her Highness. Philip admitted that he was not entirely interested. He said that he had never heard anything like that from the princess herself, especially about the wedding. He had also heard these rumors from the maid. Ute was overcome with anger. Kirsten heard about the wedding and asked if she had told them about it. He added that rumors of such a plan always spread around the district. Amy suggested that her secret lover might be someone else. The other girl was embarrassed not knowing Sir Kirsten was there, yet was worried that Her Highness might get married soon. Kirsten added that they get along well with each other. He asked where they are now. He asked Philip again, where was Her Highness and her lover right now? Philip said he thought the princess had gone into the garden with the priest. Amy asked why he wanted to disturb them. Kirsten believed that the rumors of her love affair only existed because of the political aspects. But he wondered why it was a priest. He wondered if she really loved him. Isaac informed Ophelia that this poison was different from those known to the aristocrats. The young man said he had no idea how to make it. The princess said he must have misunderstood her and clarified that she didn't need the poison for murder. Kirsten unexpectedly appeared apologizing to Her Highness. She asked the teacher why he was here. Ophelia was worried that he had so much determination. Kirsten turned to Isaac and told him to carry out Her Highness's orders and prepare the poison as she requested. The girl wondered how he could know Isaac. The Sir invited the princess to come with him and assured her that he himself could prepare the poison for her. Kirsten grabbed the princess's hand quite tightly. Ophelia was angry and wondered what he was even thinking. The dark-haired young man asked what he had said wrong. Her Highness demanded that he say how he knew Isaac. She asked who had given him permission to speak on her behalf in the first place. Ophelia mentioned her hand injury. She told Kirsten that even though he was very talented, that didn't give him the right to test her patience. Sir was embarrassed and began to make excuses. Ophelia thought she was confused by his eyes. After all, in past lives, she had never seen them change color. So she decided that this was direct evidence of his reincarnation, but he also decided to get closer to her because he had memories from his past life. Ophelia turned around and announced that she was returning to the palace. She said they would talk next time Isaac agreed, and Kirsten asked when that next time would be. He started screaming, why should he even wait for her? But the princess thought that if this was a sign of reincarnation, then her eyes should have changed color too. She asked if Kirsten really wanted to hear the answer. For several days in a row, Philip suggested that Kirsten seemed desperate. Ophelia replied that she was not at all interested. She noted in her mind that she felt uncomfortable talking to him, although they had previously talked about everything in the world. Philip clarified that the rumors are different. He told how a maid was returning and heard someone crying. That's when, in his opinion, the rumors started. According to her, the blonde-haired young man was knocking on the door and asking to be heard. Ophelia asked, what kind of rumors are these? Philip warned Ophelia to be closer to Kirsten's teacher than to Isaac. Ophelia asked why and what Isaac was there for anyway. Kirsten, under any circumstances. She also added rather irritably that the guard should learn the rules of chess because it was no good. Someone outside Her Highness's door said they wanted to see her. The princess guessed that it was Kirsten's voice and noted that he was too stubborn. The girl wanted to explain something else to Philip, but noticed that he had already left. Ophelia knew that she didn't want to see Kirsten now because he might ruin her plan. That was the real reason, not because he had betrayed her in a past life. She was angry that this wizard was behaving so impudently, and Kirsten said that he had come to apologize to her. The princess was very surprised and asked again. He confirmed and asked her to let him in. Sir Kirsten began to apologize to Her Highness for his actions. He admitted that he himself did not understand the reason for his behavior. He admitted that he was too arrogant and said that he would always be her servant. Ophelia asked if he was sure. The young man answered in the affirmative and said that this was why he had come to apologize. He admitted that he didn't understand where such a strong desire to help her came from. Kirsten added that he wants to devote himself entirely to the princess. But he also said that he knew she already had a close subordinate, so he would stay in his place. The princess wondered who he meant. Ophelia asked if this meant he would stop looking for ways to get closer to her. The young man replied that he would like to lie now. Kirsten admitted that he could not keep his promise. He asked the princess if it annoyed her. The princess was silent and laughed, and the teacher said that Assad also often scolds him because he behaves like a child. It seemed to the girl that Kirsten was embarrassed for the first time in his life, and she knew him as the first magician of the empire. She immediately decided that she should keep herself in check and not show her emotions. The young man asked Her Highness if she was really laughing. Ophelia imagined Assad scolding his older brother for acting like a child. The princess replied that she was not laughing, but he denied it, but mentally noted that she was in a good mood. She admitted that she didn't know how to control her emotions, but she wanted to know how he scolded him. Even though she was still angry with Sir Kirsten, replied that if she smiled, it meant she wasn't angry anymore. The princess asked the teacher to promise not to bother her again. The young man said he didn't want to do that, and the girl said she was starting to get angry with him. She wondered if it was possible that he cried every night. Amy, who saw the whole picture, said it was a good job. Ophelia thought that maybe she had met the real Kirsten right now, but she knew that now was not the time to open up to those feelings. She asked Kirsten to keep his distance because she was a princess and he was only the prince's teacher. He promised to do his best. Ophelia said she would go first and warned Sir Kirsten to watch himself as he had not been looking very well lately. He thanked Her Highness for her concern. When the princess left, Kirsten noticed someone's feet in the bushes. He told the young priest that he could leave now. Kirsten turned to the princess's lover and asked him not to hide like a rat. Isaac didn't understand who was the rat and who was the princess's lover. The maids discussed the latest rumors. They decided that there had been a bloody fight over one flower. One worker reported that Lord Kirsten and Priest Isaac had a fight in the garden over Her Highness. Someone asked who won the battle. The answer was that the result was obvious because it was a battle between a priest and a magician. The maid said that Lord Kirsten had used his magic to make the priest fall. Another girl admitted that she knew a different version of events. Some of them also suggested that was it really that difficult to defeat Priest Isaac? The maids continued to discuss and place bets on the battle between the priest and the mage. Philip joked with the princess and said that these guys were surprisingly popular. Ophelia decided that the workers had a lot of free time if they were gossiping like that. She thought of increasing their duties so that they wouldn't even have time to sleep. Philip told the princess that he found this unacceptable and asked where she was going. Ophelia replied that she wanted to meet with the priest, Isaac, to put an end to it. The young man repeated, "Is this really about the priest, Isaac?" The princess visited the library and admitted that she thought it was just a rumor. She looked at Isaac and said that Sir Kirsten had indeed beaten him. The priest asked if he really looked like the kind of person who would start a fight for no reason. The girl thought that in a past life, that was how it was. Isaac added that he didn't start any fights because he didn't want to waste his precious time like that. Ophelia confirmed that she trusted him and knew that he would never strike first. The young man wondered why she spoke as if she knew him well. He confessed to Her Highness that he had spoken to this magician Kirsten. Ophelia was very surprised by this discovery. The priest remembered the scene when the sir called him first the princess's lover, then a rat, and told him to stop hiding. Then Kirsten told him that Her Highness's request did not concern poison and that he was not the kind of person to walk around for longer. He added that he thought the medicine the princess wanted was called anesthesia. Kirsten said he apologized to the priest. The maids who were watching everything decided that they had started fighting over the princess. That's where the rumors came from. The teacher turned to Isaac Beleverin and asked for forgiveness for the rudeness shown towards the princess's beloved. The priest thought that the sir was a very selfish man, but he still defended the princess's honor. But he might actually be the thief of the century. He asked Ophelia if she really only needed anesthesia. Her Highness admitted that all she wanted was a sedative that is anesthesia. She clarified that she needed medication that would deprive her of all feelings. The princess said she had heard that only priests could study this substance. She also said that there could be big problems if someone were to be poisoned by this medicine. Isaac wondered how she could know so much about doctors. He thought that he had already met people who pretended to be well acquainted with doctors, especially aristocrats of the imperial palace. In his opinion, they were very good at adapting to the situation, but he wondered if he could trust her. Ophelia said that she gave him the word of honor of the only princess of the empire and asked him to believe her. Isaac had a thought that the thief of the century might be the princess of the empire. He asked why she needed anesthesia. Ophelia admitted that she just wants to get rid of the feeling of pain because she doesn't want to feel anything. Isaac read great pain in her eyes. He compared her eyes to the gaze of patients praying in front of a temple for God's mercy. So the priest decided that it was unlikely that she had made all this up. He said that he would take responsibility and help Her Highness. He also promised to provide laboratories and materials for study. The doctor specified that he would need a 20-year-old mandrake root, a new polydactyl Giza who was born last month, and the patient's 7th nail. The princess said she understood and asked if he really needed all this. Philip was listening around the corner. Ophelia still asked Isaac why he had such a face if he hadn't had a fight with Kirsten. The fact was that Isaac found a rare herb in the garden of the imperial palace, but he stole a lot of herbs that were imperial property. Ophelia said they were married now, so he could just ask her. An irritated Nye shouted and turned to his brother Philip. He tried to wake the young man and showed him where to get his clothes. He added that breakfast was at Emma's house. The young man said he was getting late and asked the boy to wake him up a little earlier. Now said that Philip behaves exactly like his brother now. He admitted that he was afraid of him at first, and now everything can go first. The prince's bodyguard thought that he should tell the princess everything today. Ophelia asked Philip if he thought she needed to increase her security. The young man was embarrassed and said that she probably hadn't thought about it. He added that for her safety, she should keep a strong man like Kirsten by her side, not a weak one like a priest. Her Highness was angry with Philip and thought he was not smart enough like his younger brother. Ophelia asked Philip if he remembered the trap from which the rabbits in the garden jumped out. He replied that he did indeed remember and added that this was also the reason he had started this conversation. The young man asked if anyone had been caught who had wanted to harm her. Her Highness asked him how many people he thought could use such great magic. She clarified that he had also been at the very bottom, so he should know. Ophelia made it clear to him that he had realized everything too late. Philip asked why she had allowed such a person into the palace. The princess thought she needed to go to the laboratory. Her Highness asked Isaac if he liked this laboratory. Ophelia decided that she was simply unbeatable. She said that the materials he had requested had already arrived and asked what he was looking for there. Isaac admitted that he was looking for her bodyguard Philip. He said that Philip always shows up at the lab and behaves inappropriately, so he was going to take appropriate action if he saw him today. Ophelia asked what kind of measures were involved. She admitted that she embellished a little the fact that Philip is her bodyguard, so there is no need for it. Isaac replied that although he annoyed him, he still commanded respect for acting in the interests of Her Highness. He added that it was not easy to win people's favor, but she had succeeded. The princess turned to the priest and noted that he looked at the world so positively. She wondered if he was like the high priest. The young man replied that this could not be. He wondered why she spoke and acted as if she didn't deserve anyone's protection, though he admitted she might have ulterior motives. Isaac said he sees many people acting out of goodwill for the benefit of the princess. Her Highness met Philip and asked if he had any business with Isaac. She thought he would only be clinging to Kirsten all day. He said no. He started to make excuses, but said that he heard her go to the lab by herself and decided to accompany her. Ophelia asked if there was any danger for her in the palace and if he was really so worried about her. She also reminded him if he remembered their agreement, replied that he remembered that he had to take her life, and added that, until then, she should still be safe. He also said that then Nye, who is currently under the protection of the princess, would also suffer. Philip admitted that it was the first time he had seen his younger brother so happy. He admits that the princess gives him what he could not give. The princess thought that he was worried about her because he was afraid of losing the life they had now. The young man said that he had learned by the way that it was Her Highness's order to put him in the same room as Nay. Then the princess thought she saw the true essence of now. The young man had something important planned. He kissed the princess's hand. The guy thanked Ophelia and said that it was important for him to say this in his true image. Her Highness, rather surprised, said that there was something wrong with his clothes. Now said that his clothes had become too small and he needed to go and tidy himself up. The princess confirmed that he looked unkempt now. Her Highness thought that his love for his younger brother had not gone anywhere. So she decided that she had done the right thing by putting them in a room together. She also thought that next time she should tell him that she also had a motive, so she didn't have to be so grateful. Ophelia said goodnight. Shauna told the prince that he had become close to the princess recently. Ute replied that he was following her recommendations because she herself said that until he became strong, he should be friends with the princess. The maid confirmed this and asked him not to forget that Ophelia was the enemy who killed Sitara. The prince assured him that he knew this. He must be brutally killed and avenged. But before his eyes appeared the beautiful face of the princess with the flowers he had given her. Ophelia asked if they were talking about a wedding. The maternal grandfather replied that he thought Her Highness had recently become interested in male friendships. Therefore, he would like to find a suitable one. The girl was unpleasantly surprised and said that there had been a lot of rumors around her lately. But did the Duke really believe them? She suggested that the Duke himself might be involved as he had been absent from the palace for some time. Her Highness asked if he wanted her to marry him. Grandpa asked if she had provoked all this. Now the empire was torn into two parts. Some forces served Her Highness. According to him, there was also a faction in support of Utah. Herzog Sarkart sternly stated that if the prince had remained in captivity, such problems would not have arisen. He added that this illegitimate child could not be released. The princess said that his words were tantamount to treason, regardless of his status and position. The man shouted nervously and addressed the lady by her full name. He was one of the few people allowed to call her Ophelia. Sarkart advised her to increase her power through marriage and predicted that she would be the next empress. The Duke was the only one who protected little Ophelia after the empress's death. He asked if the princess really wanted this fatherless man to take the empire away from her. The man added that marriage was a good tool for maintaining power. Ophelia thought that it was not in her best interest to rule softly. Nevertheless, she decided that she must seize this chance. This was a battle between the factions of the princess and the prince taking place behind the scenes of the throne. The Duke noted that the princess's disadvantage is that she looks like her mother, so she should find as many accomplices as possible. Her Highness didn't understand why the Duke was acting so impudently. He said he cared about her, but she still didn't understand his true motive. Suddenly, during the conversation, Her Highness found herself in handcuffs. She asked Duke Sarkart if she really thought he had chained her to the table. Ophelia started screaming, "Where are these men taking her?" Grandfather replied that she had to go see the brides. The man clarified that they did it by force because she did not agree voluntarily. The princess screamed that she had been released and promised that she would not run away anywhere. The Duke assured the princess not to worry as a healthy partner had been prepared for her to produce an heir. Ophelia thought that this old man had completely lost his shame, but she understood that he would never stop. Her Highness decided that no matter who came, she would resist. But at the same time, she was troubled by some bad premonition. She said out loud that it could be anyone but Lord Kirsten. Kirsten said that he had also been waiting for this precious meeting with Her Highness. The boys were practicing with their swords. Nye complained, "How can you swing them 100 times?" Ute made a remark to stop complaining. The prince angrily added that if he didn't like something, he could go home. He asked Nay if his parents even knew he was here. The boy noticed that the prince was rude to him every day. He replied that there were no parents, only him and his brother, and even he was often not at home. Ute asked if that was true. He decided that Nye was too close to his brother and remembered the princess. The prince remembered the scene when Her Highness gave the order to burn all of Sitara's belongings. Clothes, portraits, jewelry. Nye suggested out loud that the prince had been very lucky in life and had probably been pampered from birth. The boy asked if His Highness had many portraits of his mother. He told him that in the alley where he lived, a man painted portraits without seeing people. Ute admitted that he didn't have a single portrait of his mother either. Nye asked if they hadn't been left in that tower. The prince became nervous and assured him that he was telling the truth. He asked if the tower was an extension of the palace. The boy added that he envied the prince's life. He assumed that he probably had many memories with the princess. Yet asked Nay if the man really drew portraits from memory. The boy asked the question again in surprise. The prince said nervously that he had just been talking about the artist. Nye replied that he now understood that it was about the man from the alley. Ute said they had to go. Nye clarified whether he meant the artist, adding that he had no money and that the service was expensive. The prince was upset. Is it really so impossible? The young man suggested that they might steal jewels from the imperial palace. Ute asked again. Meanwhile, the chained princess was screaming that she was fed up with it, but here was Lord Kirsten again. She asked if she had not warned him recently. She clarified that she would like to see his face less often. Lord confirmed that he had heard that from her. He added that the Erhard family would probably not be able to refuse Duke Sarkart's offer. Ophelia once again became mentally angry with Grandpa Sarkart. In fact, the offer to go on the tour first came to the eldest son, Assad. Kirsten said that Assad got sick from the stress, so he had to leave. Ophelia nodded understandingly, but she thought that if Lord Assad was sick now, then Lord Kirsten decided to apologize before they began their conversation. The princess screamed that he was reaching under the hem of her skirt and that it was so rude. The young man said that even if he was a duke who gave him the right to treat the princess like that, Ophelia noted that he had truly extraordinary abilities. The chain explosion didn't even harm her. The young man noted that now they could talk in a more comfortable environment. Her Highness thanked him and apologized as she had no intention of marrying a lord. Kirsten replied that he hadn't expected anything when he came here, but he offered to have a cup of tea. The girl said he was very pushy. The girl replied that she needed to check something, so he should drink the tea himself. The Lord noted that Her Highness was only so cruel towards him. He asked her permission to promise her one thing. Kirsten admitted that if there were a fight for the right to be the next emperor, the Erhard family would fully support her. The princess thought that this was all very absurd because Ute was still a child and did not want to hold this position himself yet. Her Highness thought it was completely wrong to impeach a person elected by the people. As a result of such actions, the chosen person could be executed just like she herself was in a past life. Kirsten repeated that he wanted to give everything to the princess. He wondered if this was love, so he dared to ask. At that moment, Ophelia saw Amy and Philip and called them. They answered the princess together. Her Highness asked what Ute was doing now. Philip replied that now, as usual, there is a fencing lesson with Sir Assad. But the teacher is ill, so the prince makes 100 swings with his sword on his own. Ophelia made a remark about why the prince was not guarded now and ordered to go and check on him. The Lord tried to return to his question. He added that he was used to always being in the background. The young man asked if the prince was okay if she said to go and check on him. Ophelia explained that he could be kidnapped because despite the fact that he had been sitting in the tower for a long time, he still remained a prince, and without supervision could become easy prey like a man of blue blood. The princess began to think that the kidnapping could hardly happen on the territory of the palace. But beyond its borders, there might be a desperate person who would take such a step and use the bait for the prince. And only then would Ute fall into the hands of the customer who would use him for his own purposes. Nye decided that if he did that, he could leave the palace grounds without hindrance. Ute admitted that he had already gone to a festival with the princess once. The boy Nye did indeed steal jewels from the imperial palace. He thought that would be enough to ensure that Brother Now would never have to work hard again. Ute asked the boy what he was doing and urged them to go to the artist as soon as possible. But Nye replied that he needed to ask people about him. The prince was worried that he did not know where the artist was now. The next moment, Nye found the man and began to show him something. He led him to the right place and introduced him to Prince Utah. The boy showed the place he was talking about. The prince noticed the complete unsanitary conditions around him and noted that even the tower was not so dirty. Nye admitted that the place looked like his home, so it was easy to find. Ute wondered if Nye really lived in a place like this. Another boy asked if it really looked that bad. He suggested going in first. His Highness stopped him and told him to wait. He noticed people following them and had a strange feeling. The guy warned Naya so that he doesn't go alone. It was completely dark outside the door, and Ute began to call out to his friend in fear. Then the prince saw a bright glow and had many questions. The strange creature that appeared before him addressed him as a dear guest and told him that he had come to a special place. Jet wondered if this person was really an artist. He said he had heard that this man could paint a portrait and asked if that was true. The artist asked the boy to close his eyes and imagine the person he missed. Yat wondered if this was safe. He tried to remember his mother, but an image of Her Highness also appeared in his mind. The strange creature told him to concentrate more and remember his mother. She clarified that the crystal ball shows a completely different person. The prince tried to remember his mother again, but only a few moments remained in his memory. Jet tried to remember his mother, but he admitted that despite all his efforts, a smiling Ophelia appeared before his eyes. He remembered well that when the emperor fell ill, it was she who locked him in that tower. Then he didn't understand at all why he was constantly thinking about her. He forbade himself from thinking about Her Highness and remembered that he must avenge her. Now he had to remember his mother's face. Yud began to remember how he had been informed that Mrs. Sitara had committed suicide by drinking poison. But suddenly, he saw a giant in a mask shouting that he needed to catch that guy immediately. The giant forcibly held Nai. Yud shouted, echoing his comrade. Nai cursed and shouted for the prince to run away because these people wanted to catch him. His Highness was very surprised by such a request and asked again. The boy shouted that these people had hidden behind the tent and grabbed him, and they were very dangerous. The giant assured Nai that he would take care of him. Oot was very angry and determined to act. The man knew the mask and approached Yud. He accused him of making him pay for stealing Nai from him. The prince remembered that this was the man who had exploited Nai. More men appeared in the room, smiling ironically. They assured the prince that they would not harm him, but that he should simply follow them. Ute wondered if there were about 4 enemies around, but would he be able to deal with them alone? He understood that no one would save him now. The magic ball still had Ophelia's face in it. The strange creature laughed evilly. One of the Yaga men said that they had come to accompany the prince. But was this brave little fellow really going to attack them? But suddenly he felt a blow from behind. It was Isaac Belevrin. Ute shouted in surprise, "Is this really a priest?" Isaac asked the man if he had said he had come to accompany the prince, but he was lying on the floor unconscious. The priest asked if he had done the right thing by hitting him. Ute thanked him for coming and said he had done everything right. Isaac said he was sitting at the top of a tree, but suddenly he saw 2 children leaving the palace. The priest said that he thought they were leaving unaccompanied, so he decided to follow them because in his opinion, walking alone was a bad idea. The giant addressed Isaac, calling him a boy. He warned that they were in different weight categories, so he shouldn't rush in. Isaac skillfully fought back using magical power. Nai also drove away the enemies, and the prince reassured him. The boy advised Mr. Utah to choose the right moment and run away. The prince asked if he really should run away himself. Isaac warned that even if they managed to escape, they would still be caught. The priest began to count and noted that there were 7, 8, about 10. Ute was surprised by the number 10 and said that he only saw 4 enemies. Isaac objected and said he had been misunderstood. He had calculated how long it would take them. Meanwhile, Philip studied the tracks on the road. Ophelia asked him what was wrong with the prince and assumed that he had gone outside the castle. Her Highness asked the guard if he could follow up. He replied that he was just waiting for orders. He assured the princess that he would definitely bring him back. Philip tried to tell Her Highness that it would be safer for her to stay. Ophelia said she would go herself and ordered Amy to prepare for the journey. The princess reasoned that Yut had disappeared with Nai, and it didn't look like he was going to leave alone. She didn't want to think that at all, but the question still arose. Had Utah sold Nai? After all, he needed money to live peacefully with his brother now. Kirsten asked Her Highness if she was worried about the prince. The princess replied that the prince of the empire had disappeared, so they all had to worry. Sir said he was worried about something else. He asked why such a precious person of the empire was dating a murderer. Ophelia understood that he meant now. Kirsten said he had wanted to ask Her Highness about this for a long time, but he knew she had changed his appearance with a magical engagement ring. So why does she keep a murderer around? He asked if the reason could be that wedding ring. Philip shouted that they had arrived because the tracks led to this place. He began to call the prince Naya, but the princess warned him not to be in such a hurry. But the guard didn't listen and kept calling the boys. He shouted that they shouldn't worry because he had come to save them. Ood informed Philip that he was very late. His Highness clarified that the priest had dealt with everyone. Isaac explained that if you know the theory, you can easily figure everything out. And he was a doctor and he studied the human body. He added that people have weak points. All you have to do is hit them. But the priest himself groaned because he was a little traumatized. The artist offered to cure him with magic, but Isaac refused. He explained that he had survived it himself because at that time the prince was under the artist's protection. The priest admitted that he was a good magician, but he himself suffered a little because those men were hiding in his tent. Philip asked if they were really hiding in the tent. Philip here as well. Philip at this time continued to ponder how so many people could have hidden in the tent unnoticed without the magician even noticing them. He concluded that they were acting in a team. The prince thought it was absurd. Ute noticed that it was getting dark again, just like when he had just entered the tent. but he heard a sound like the ringing of a bell. The artist admitted that they happened to act together, but they had completely different goals. The artist girl informed the prince that she had finished the portrait of his mother. She added that now the prince must pay. Ophelia and Kirsten also got inside the tent. The princess noticed that she had seen Philip enter this very place, but that there was no one there now. She asked if there was a secret exit. Kirsten thought about the magical barrier. Her Highness ordered the guards to check everything around. Sir knew it was useless because no magician would be able to see this magical barrier. He thought that the princess could not have known about the existence of this barrier. Kirsten informed Her Highness that it was a magical barrier and he had to step forward. Ophelia admitted that she expected nothing less from the Empire's best mage. She called Lord Kirsten a trustworthy man. He replied that it was because he would be the next master of the magic tower. Sir began to tell Her Highness about this phenomenon. The princess shouted that it was a magical barrier. Kirsten asked again what she meant. Ophelia explained that they immediately followed Philip, but he disappeared. She thought he simply didn't have time to physically move to another space. The Sir asked if the princess immediately guessed that it could be a magical barrier. Then why did she order to look for a secret passage? Her Highness assumed that only a true magician could answer her. She asked if it was really a magical barrier. Kirsten didn't understand how she could have guessed that. The Lord replied that Her Highness was right. He mentally noted how intelligent and talented she was. Ophelia said that in that case, he had to do one thing. The artist girl admitted that she had made a deal with the prince and had nothing to do with those bandits. She assured Ute that his companions were fine and offered to put them into eternal sleep using magic. His Highness asked what she wanted from him. The artist again remembered the portrait of Sitara's mother. She offered to exchange it for a ring worn by his bodyguard. Ute wondered why she needed Philip's ring. He remembered asking him where he got that beautiful ring from. The young man replied that the princess had given it to him. The prince told the artist that it was a gift from the princess, so he couldn't give it away as he pleased. The girl magician replied that she found it rather strange that the prince should act in the interests of Her Highness. She asked if she was not his sworn enemy. She also smiled contentedly and noted that she had enjoyed looking at his memories through the crystal ball. She confessed that she wanted to cut off the prince's head. Ute trembled with terror. Ophelia came to the rescue just in time. Kirsten said that at Her Highness's request, he had loosened the barrier. Now she had to apply a little more force. The magical battle between the princess and the artist continued. The girl laughed. Ophelia asked what she was doing with the prince. The girl replied that she thought their relationship with the prince was about to deteriorate. She said that she had put a small bomb in his head, but corrected that it was a gift. The artist admitted that many people had already arrived, but she didn't feel strong enough to face the imperial soldiers and the future owner of the magic tower, so she would simply retreat. Ophelia asked if she really thought she would be let go so easily. The princess screamed and called out for Utah. The artist said that they would see each other again and called Her Highness a beautiful princess. But she clarified that this will happen in the near future. Ophelia carried her younger brother to the castle alone. Isaac admitted that he didn't know there were so many magicians like Lord Kirsten in the castle, but he admitted that he was glad that the prince was saved. The princess thanked Isaac for his participation. The young man was surprised by such a gift from the princess and replied that he was welcome. Ute apologized to Her Highness for leaving the palace without permission. Ophelia replied that everything was fine and asked if this was the first time he had gotten so close to someone his own age. She supposed it must have been a fun adventure since it was the first time he had been deceived like that. Ute thought that she probably didn't know about his mother's portrait yet. He asked her not to punish Nay too much. Ophelia wondered what she should do right. She told the prince to go because his teachers must have given him a lot of homework. The princess handed him the pendant and said that this thing must be his. The guy asked if she meant him. Her Highness reported that she had found it in the artist's tent. She assumed that it was a precious thing to him, so he must have it. Ute thanked his sister for not throwing him out and taking him with her. She replied that enough thanks, he had to go. Kirsten asked if she was ashamed. Isaac added that the prince would be even more happy. Then the princess got angry and asked what they had forgotten here, the two of them. Ophelia apologized and said that things were not as they thought. Sir thought how sweet she really was. She asked Lord Kirsten to share her observations about the prince. He agreed. He determined that Ute was full of different thoughts, but the flow of magical power inside was normal. The priest added that the situation was the same with his holy power. Only minor flaws were found. Ophelia gave into doubts, remembering that the artist had planted a bomb in his head. Kirsten decided it was time for magical knowledge. The princess asked if it was about mental magic. The girl herself clarified that this is not like brainwashing, but simply hallucinations or visions that are temporary. Therefore, the mental magic here is weak. Kirsten screamed at Her Highness that he was actually the best magician here. He expressed his complaints about why she always decided everything herself, and when did she manage to figure this out? Ophelia replied that if she became the princess of the empire, she should know all this. She decided that she had to conduct a test and asked Isaac for more magic books. The priest refused and concluded that Her Highness needed rest. He determined that her temperature had risen slightly. Kirsten silently watched their dialogue and actions. Isaac said she needed to drink the priest's tea to relieve her fatigue. The princess asked if it was the same tea they had drunk in the temple and refused. Kirsten intervened and announced that symptoms such as simple fatigue could be relieved with the help of his magic. The princess doubted that it could be dangerous. The Lord admitted that in this way he wanted to express his feelings for her. Ophelia tensed and seemed to be trying to strike, clenching her fists with full force. She wondered if this was really magic. The girl was left upset as a result because nothing magical happened. Both young men decided that magic did not work on the princess. Ute was studying in the garden under a tree. Nye asked him if he had received the portrait. The boy thanked the prince for covering it up. Ute replied that he himself had come up with the idea for them to leave the palace. He added that a lot of things were reflected in the crystal ball that day. Nye asked for forgiveness from His Highness and admitted that he was the one who stirred up his past, perhaps out of jealousy. The prince grabbed his head and made strange sounds. The young man asked him if something hurt. Ute said that after returning from the artist, he sometimes hears a voice in his head. Someone seemed to be saying that Yuta should be spared and her life should be taken. He wondered whose voice it was, perhaps his mother's. His Highness didn't understand why he was hearing such things. Nye was seriously frightened by the prince's condition and asked if he was okay. He suggested calling someone for help. Unexpectedly, a priest appeared before them and addressed His Highness. Nye was delighted to see him and said he was just in time. He explained that the prince seemed to be in pain and was hearing voices. Isaac replied that everything would be fine if he believed the princess's words. He remembered how Ophelia had qualified it as a vision or a hallucination. The priest said it was a special tea from the temple prepared for His Highness to relieve fatigue. Ute wanted to refuse, but was told to drink it. Isaac said that the princess also refuses if he doesn't take care of the prince first. He couldn't believe that the princess cared about him. In his head, he could hear Sitara's mother begging Her Highness to at least spare Utah. He decided that even without these voices in his head, he hated the princess enough. He asked the prince why he was crying, but Ute wondered why Ophelia was doing everything she could to make him stop hating her. The princess was drinking tea and noticed that it was too hot. The artist wondered how he could dispel the magic and restore his feelings to normal so quickly. She had expected a longer effect. The princess wondered who was responsible for kidnapping the prince. It seemed as if Nye wanted to sell him. Philip tried to prove that the matter was about his brother Nye, and undoubtedly he accidentally put the prince in danger. He asked for the lightest punishment for him relying on the good nature of Her Highness. The princess was unhappy that this boy had come to her again. Emma shouted at Philip, "How dare he come in here when Her Highness is changing her outfit?" The young man replied that they would rather kill him. Ophelia decided to play a joke on him. She asked if he was trying to save his blood after he had committed such a terrible sin. Philip replied that he was still a child and agreed to take the blame and accept the punishment for it. The older brother offered to give the princess everything he had so that she would feel sorry for Nye. Ophelia asked if he was really capable of giving everything he had. She threw him a comb and told him to brush his hair. Philip asked if it was enough for him to just clean this comb and promised to clean it until it shined. The princess shook her head. Then the young man said he could sweep everything and clean her dressing room with a comb. He thought he might have to clean up the garden when he saw the princess's reaction, but she shook her head again. Then Philip asked if it was really necessary to wash the whole castle. The princess laughed and said that he understood everything correctly. After some time, Ophelia noted that the matter with the artist was over. She was sitting with the boys at a picnic and she felt very calm. Because besides the spell that had been placed on Utah, other strange things were happening. At one point, the prince said he no longer had a headache or heard voices. Everything resolved itself. The princess was surprised that the artist wanted the ring so much that she gave it to Philip. She wondered why he wanted the ring. Philip, as promised, cleaned the castle, even its tops. Nye was worried and told Her Highness that he could fall like that. Ute added that he did not know what Philip's fault was, but perhaps the princess would forgive him. Ophelia thought she would forgive him if she saw his desire to clean properly, but she didn't understand what kind of mess he was making. Ute turned to the princess and informed her that Philip was his dear friend, so he was worried about him that he might get hurt. The princess saw only good in this because the prince had better opened his soul to her. She thought it was because she had given him Sitara's portrait. Ophelia suggested that the boys go and ask him to come down together. They were very happy. The girl was happy that everything was going so well. She decided that if everything continued like this, she would be able to die in peace. The priest came and addressed Her Highness. He asked her to come to his lab for a short while. He needed to check on the princess's personal condition. Ophelia refused and said that she would be busy all this time. She had business with Philip right now. Her Highness wondered if she had refused not wanting to, but that he had only wanted to check on her health. Isaac added that the problem of Her Highness being unaffected by magic could be easily solved. Ophelia asked him not to talk about it so as not to scare the children. She added that there was nothing special about it. The priest agreed if Her Highness wished and turned to leave, but the princess was somewhat uneasy about Isaac. She felt indebted to him because it was he who had protected Nay and the prince from that artist. Ute was unhappy with the appearance of Priest Isaac. Soon the princess asked what happened when her brother began to fall to the ground. But soon they all found themselves in the grass. Ophelia was worried about her indecent appearance at this time. Ute apologized for losing his balance, and Nye cried that he couldn't get up because he was tangled in the grass. The princess was very embarrassed when she saw Isaac looking straight at her. The priest explained that this happens when she avoids him. Ophelia asked what he meant. The young man replied that if she did not feel uncomfortable, he was still a priest and had to take care of Her Highness's health. Therefore, he added that he would try again and again. He asked her not to avoid him. Isaac asked her again. Ophelia shouted that she wasn't trying to avoid him on purpose. It just happened that way. The prince was delighted that there were people who could talk so calmly to the princess herself and not lose their heads over it. He decided that he wanted to become a person like the priest. Ute was worried that Her Highness had caught a cold. He noted that her hand was quite warm. Meanwhile, in prison, there were sounds of blows and coughing. A voice in the darkness announced that he would tell everything he knew about the artist and begged for mercy. Kirsten ordered them to stop and asked if the goal was to possess the ring. The princess admired Isaac Beleverin, the high priest's first disciple. She wondered if his eyelashes had always been so soft, his cheeks so rosy and his skin so fragrant. Isaac asked the princess what she was looking at. Ophelia was nervous, unable to take her eyes off him. She replied that she had come because the report on the painkiller trial was a little late. She decided she needed to stay away from him for a while and said she would leave if he wasn't ready yet. The priest asked if she was really leaving already. He managed to say that if she needed a report, but then something happened. The princess wondered what kind of smoke was eating away at her eyes. She asked Isaac if he was okay. He abruptly covered the princess and began to explain. It was a harmful gas that evaporated when the medicine was mixed. The priest said that now we need to spend some time in this position. The princess became agitated as she smelled his pleasant scent and felt his steady hand on her. She decided that she needed to calm down urgently. She said she was completely fine, so she had to go. Ophelia wanted to go somewhere else where Isaac wouldn't be, so her heart wouldn't be pounding so much. The priest wondered why he had been in such a strange state lately, even sleeping badly and making mistakes out of nowhere. He decided that he needed to go to church. He told himself to pull himself together and be careful not to mix the medicines together again. But it seems something happened again in the laboratory. The high priest laughed and said, "That's hard to believe." He explained that two people visited him at the same time who were difficult to see. Isaac turned around and started walking back. The old man grabbed him and asked where the boy was going because Her Highness was here and it would be a violation of etiquette. The princess intervened and told the high priest to let him go. She clarified that she had come here to have a cup of tea. Ophelia wished Isaac wasn't here at this time. The princess confessed that there was no one who could make the temple's specialty as well as the high priest. She confided that Isaac's tea was too hot. The priest said that she seemed calmer and that he was glad. He asked Ophelia how the fearless young man was doing and if he was causing trouble. The princess laughed and asked if it was about the priest Isaac. She replied that he was helping them a lot. The girl thought that if it weren't for Isaac, Ute would have faced many problems. She also liked that he was constantly working on testing the painkiller for her. She mentally noted that it was very good that Isaac was there with them. At the same time, the princess did not like the fact that her heart began to beat faster in the presence of the young priest. The high priest admitted that he was worried when he sent him to the palace because he was still very young. He was worried that Isaac might put poison in the food or set something on fire. The princess thought the tea was a little too hot. Ophelia could not believe the priest's doubts about Isaac. She said the high priest was exaggerating too much. The man said he would be happy to think so himself. The old man admitted that in the past, Isaac was very gloomy and had an explosive temper. But now, thanks to the princess, he has become much calmer. He added that Her Highness must know about the young man's past. The girl thought that even in past lives, she had never asked him anything, and he himself had never told her anything like that. Ophelia heard a bang and asked, "What was that noise?" The high priest wondered who dared to interrupt them when he was about to tell them about Isaac's past. The count demanded that the high priest come out to him. He was begged to stay as he was in the temple. This ignorant person turned out to be Count Ruel. The man shouted that he had made so many donations to the temple and now he was being treated so rudely. The priest told Ophelia that Count Ruel had come again. He assured her that the other priests would take care of him and suggested that they go to a quiet place. The princess heard the count shouting that if the high priest was not there, then Isaac should be called to him. He also shouted that he had done research and found that Isaac was a commoner. He asked how they were not ashamed. Ophelia noted that this was all quite provocative for the priests and Isaac himself. The old man begged that the young man not be in that place. The princess sighed with regret because she considered him the most polite person. Is it Isaac? Did a believer who received God's mercy and love always make such an aggressive expression on his face? Count Ruel pointed at him and shouted that this was the same low-class Isaac. The crowd held back the count, and people shouted that this was impossible. Ruel shouted at the young priest that he could not hear the truth. Ophelia was worried that there might be big problems. She mentally thanked God that everything had gone smoothly. The agitated clergy came to the supreme leader with a request to remove Count Ruel. The priest cursed that they were all scoundrels, that they had disturbed him, and he had a guest. The people cried that they could not bear it any longer. The princess hid her identity at this time. The monk complained that the count came every day and turned the temple upside down. He said that they had their own business and could not keep an eye on him all the time. Also, they could not throw a great nobleman out of the gate. The princess thought that she couldn't even start a conversation in such a situation, but still she dared to ask one man what the count's problem was. He just sighed. But then the monk said it wasn't such a big deal anymore. He said the Ruel family had gotten into trouble because of the changing seasons. Any priest could go to that place and pour out holy power. But Count Ruel, he is stubborn and wants to receive treatment only from the highest clergyman. The monk clarified that the temple's laws didn't work that way. Ophelia thought she understood now. She knew that the high priest only treated members of the royal family, but she didn't think that was enough reason to refuse. Her Highness at the same time understood that if the supreme cleric personally underwent such treatment, he would be recorded in the Book of Conspirators, so this had to be avoided. The monk admitted that the count was now making concessions and was even pleased with Isaac and asked the priest again to do something. The old man said that Isaac was shameless, although he was not because he had been summoned to the palace. The princess thought about the young priest's current state. The high priest informed Her Highness that Isaac had a very, very dark past. Ophelia admitted that the temple was as bustling as the palace and announced that she would be leaving. The priest asked if the princess was leaving already since she had not yet heard the story of Isaac's past. The girl replied that it was rude to talk about a person behind his back. The monk did not approve of her attitude toward the high priest, but the other one admitted that the lady was surprisingly beautiful and sweet. They asked if she had said anything about the palace. They also noted the beautiful hair-delicate aroma and nobility that this young beauty had acquired from birth. It suddenly dawned on them that this girl was the princess of the empire. Count Ruel offered to open the carriage door for the princess. He admitted that he was honored to meet Her Highness and added that no one can hide the fact that she is a princess. The man bowed to the moving carriage. Ophelia mentally remarked that the great nobles were all such morons. She decided that Count Ruel was no better than Duke Sarkart. She found it strange that in the place where they supposedly met by chance to say goodbye, he also gathered all the priests. She took this as pressure to get treatment from the high priest or his deputy Isaac. The princess ate cookies and reassured herself that sweets helped relieve stress. She considered this enough to replace a meal. Suddenly, a young priest appeared and said that this was not enough. He recommended that she take care of her health and eat according to the recommended daily allowance. The princess mentally calculated the calorie content of Isaac's meal and decided that he had significantly exceeded the norm. The young man exclaimed that he felt better after eating. He warned the princess to move away from the edge. The girl asked him a question in return. Ophelia angrily asked him what he had decided to do. Isaac jumped up and shouted that when a person has eaten, they should move. The princess called him a fool and said he had gone mad. The girl shouted his name and gasped. They were both silent for a while. Isaac admitted that it was more dangerous than he thought. The princess called him a fool many times and ordered him not to do it again. The priest happily claimed that his jump was cool nevertheless. So cool that the princess even forgot about her worries for a moment. Ophelia mentally asked him not to do this anymore for her sake at a time when he himself was feeling unwell. She admitted to herself that the moment she sees Isaac, she is overcome with excitement. The girl explained this by saying that she respects Isaac's desire to help others. The young man began to tell his story and said that his father was a doctor. He said that his father treated noblemen like Count Ruel, but in time he was reported to the temple and executed. Isaac added that it was all true because he had seen something bothering Her Highness after visiting the temple. He confessed that he felt much better after he opened up to the princess. Ophelia thought that only he had such a power of kindness, and only he knew how to love this world so much, and therefore he should not belong to the palace. She remembered that in all his past lives, he had wanted to travel as far as possible. The young priest asked if she would order him to treat Count Ruel. The princess asked even if he did not like it. He replied that treatment is treatment. The girl agreed and clarified that he could forget about Count Ruel. Ophelia asked Isaac if he wished to heal more people in this world than he could imagine. She sincerely wished that he would not lose that kindness in his heart. The guy asked what she meant when he heard the suggestion to try to treat more people. She showed where the old local area was. Ophelia said that after the fire, a wasteland formed there. She wants to build a large house there to treat the sick. Her Highness suggested that Isaac lay the foundation there. He was very surprised that a large medical center could appear on the wasteland of the old district. Ophelia replied that she promised to make doctors legal. She added that it would be necessary to fine-tune this system, namely to train more competent doctors and make them available to commoners. She also stated that she would try to ensure that the treatment of diseases did not become exclusively the property of the nobility.